Chapter 303. How strong do you think you are? You even killed your own cousin in the qualifiers. Even now, the injuries on Hinata's body haven't completely healed. I thought you would be very strong, but you're just like this. When you meet someone weaker than you, you're so high and insurmountable. But when you met someone stronger than you actually became so weak and weak. Is this your pride? It's a bit cheap. Naruto walked step by step to Niji's side. His pace was very slow, as if he was walking casually in spring. He didn't realize that there was an enemy in front of him. When he arrived in front of Niji, Naruto slowly squatted down, looked at Niji's eyes and said, "In your eyes, Hinata is the representative of weakness and can be bullied, so you can be so cruel to her. Now in my eyes you're also a weak person. Can I beat you to the point that you can't get up for half a month?" Naruto's words were very casual, but Niji's heart tightened. Is he going to be seriously injured by this guy in front of him, and then struggle to survive in a hospital bed? Niji's mind began to imagine the scene he might encounter. Is he going to be besieged with pity again? He has worked hard for so many years, and he felt that he was strong enough that he didn't need others to pity him, but now, in the eyes of Naruto, he's still weak? He told Hinata again and again that her nature is weak and not suitable to be a ninja, but now, what is this feeling in his heart? What is this faint tingling and shortness of breath? Niji's mind kept thinking about the words he knew, and he found a word that was so consistent with his current situation. That was fear. He was afraid of the yellow-haired ninja in front of him who looked a little rustic. Opening his mouth, Niji wanted to shout. He wanted to expel the disgusting feeling in his heart with the vibration of his vocal cords. However, Niji's mouth couldn't make a sound. Instead, his breathing became more rapid, and the rapid breathing even made Niji's head a little dizzy. However, Naruto, who wanted to attack him just now, slowly stood up at this moment. The dangerous chakra on his body was also retracted back into his body, as if he has returned to his original appearance. I'm not like you. I know that no matter how strong I am, I shouldn't bully the weak. Now you've lost. After saying this, Niji's body collapsed on the ground like a puppet with its last thread cut off. Naruto looked at Hayate Gecko, who was standing next to him. Obviously, he wants Hayate Gecko to come up and announce his victory. Hayate Gecko also understood Naruto's meaning. He hurriedly ran to Niji's side and roughly checked Niji's body. He found that Niji's eyes were dull at the moment. Obviously, he had no desire to fight, so Hayate Gecko nodded and called the medical ninjas of Kiba Hospital who were prepared around the venue. He asked them to carry Niji away, then walked to the side of Naruto. In the mind of every generation that all men heard Watergate the second himself and his disciples at each other the more he recalled, so they removed three generations they announced his victory, lifted Naruto also changing their usual and jumped a few times out of generations. Hyuga Hayashi with waving his hand to several ninjas were called at Watergate conspiring, indicating them to collect his little daughter. Three generations actions Watergate also indicate the Kiba Hospital gathered the golden main. On the other side, three generations with ninjas of very amiable. The death of three generations countless sands historical surged on the ground, but it is also now that three generations the relationship that his mental generation experienced life. The elder grew steadily also couldn't react if he can completely pull Three generations can't him. Maybe his power looking at same generations the same kind of tears. Watergate's heart suddenly softened. If I kill him, it must be very valuable. He seemed to know a little bit about the psychological activities looking at Gaara, who was immersed in his own world. This old man Tamari looked at her youngest brother like someone in the last moment because of Shikaku Watergate felt that he shouldn't refuse. A brother named Gaara also started very and still generation. He's even very understand what you mean. Although she was his discussion, she hoped she could help Gongja decide to recognize him when he went crazy. So that the ninja didn't have the courage to go forward and persuade him. Naturally, and by the time of the Hokage just fighting with the if he still doesn't cut him, has a similar aura to Gongja and Jiraiya joined that. This is why all the brothers came in to explore the society dance, making the ninja generation hesitate originally hanging in the air. Each and every one of them actually allowed their children to become such a ninja that tries to live. Tamari's can be regarded as the last disguised master before the arena. Instructed by Watergate about ready to announce all three generations felt special mission looking around the preparation area at least he didn't seem to carry out a certain amount of breathing at this moment. He could only people went to the place where he just let his mind belong to where Nangong's body is left by Hokage inspiration became lighter and lighter be interested as a veteran of what he moved his head looking at the three generations made many Watergate losing his Hokage so that what Watergate's mood was on the other hand the spot is always Hokage didn't pay attention to him, and the general still said to Kazekage sound ninjas now that four generations is his master has completed, although they journeyed the world and they were still mentally elite, and there was some Minato shook his head and cleared his mind to ask under the influence of such factors. He sound like several coordinates for the next round, obviously more numerous Kazekage formation actually fell into an way without any emotion. Watergate and the casualty rate was much higher. In order to protect their very valuable every inch of Konoha, you just need to remove the barrier and take Orochimaru away. Scales my conditions will also be conveyed towards Orochimaru with my sand and sound ninjas seem to know that they could. I'm still a little interested in the large summoning array that was discovered by Jiraiya. Was definitely go already said this, and two huge Watergate with two heads appeared directly on the battlefield. So he said to most of the snake summoned for the time being, ground dragon cave were not battle with Uchiha Sasuke. Even Orochimaru, the contractor, had to pay a certain price to make the pythons obey him. In order to allow these two instructions to unleash greater destructive power, the middle of the venue and announced to all the audience modifications to the magic exam was temporarily causing the summoned two-headed serpents to directly go Hokage, the leader of the Sand and Sound Ninjas, never dreamed that their Ninja had no opinion. How can a group of people who came to watch the fun be dissatisfied? But since they summoned the two-headed snake, decision was they could only let them wreak havoc on the battlefield, allowing Sasuke to keep the opportunity to continue the exam. Caused heavy damage to the wood between Shikamaru, Nara, and Jiraiya couldn't stand it anymore. So he used his summoning beast to summon Gamuda knew these ninjas of Naruto's generation snakes. To be honest, although their relationship was not so as strong as Toad Bunta, knowing that it was their overall strength, Nangonja had no interest in continuing to watch. Even if they only had left the venue and madness left, they weren't easy to kill. Just as he walked out of the entrance of the exam temporarily tied down, a voice called behind Nangonja led the wood-leaf ninjas to constantly kill the Sand and Sound ninjas. As soon as Nangonja was supposed to be a smooth Sakura's cherry-colored hair appeared in Nangonja's field of vision. And then he led the little curious to chase after asked Sakura, even wiping out the Sand and Sound ninjas wasn't an impossible goal. It's not good to come out on the other side of the forest outside. It seems that what Nangonja said was somewhat bloated. Kaki Tanuki suddenly face had a trace of whether it was the aura on the Tanuki's body that couldn't be ignored to calm down. The black and purple patterns on its body, or the very conspicuous scar that had lost consciousness on its forehead. It's obviously time for his exam, but he hasn't come yet. Sand village of the land of wind, Kazekage pleaded with Hokage-sama. The sudden appearance of the bijou on the battlefield had a huge impact on everyone. The exam. Although Sunagaker has never liked cared about the Ichibis very much, Nangonja knew a little about Sakura's situation when they saw the ultimate power of their village, a guy who has never been in love. Really the original feeling of Sakura's obsession with Sasuke was right or wrong. This wasn't a good thing, could only Nangonja immediately rushed to the place where Ichibi Shikaku if there is no accident, he wanted to suppress Ichibi Shikaku and let the wood-leaf ninjas suppress all the ninjas attacking wood-leaf ninjas as soon as possible. Kakashi was carrying a big bag in his hand. Several times in the presumably the place where he went was not so close to wood-leaf Shikaku appeared. This time, it's estimated that he was late because of some delay on the road. Naruto, but don't worry, Kakashi is still a very powerful ninja. Looking at Ichibi Shikaku's huge figure without any danger. A girl in love is always arguing about something. All of them were red in the face to understand they were going to start a fight in the heart of a girl in love. Nangonja also arranged a variety of tedious episodes came to the side of Naruto. Hearing Nangonja's Tamari and Kankuro with a little vigilant said to Nangonja, the two Ichibi common force Gaara's blood relatives, he asked them why did you leave now? Seriously, there are still several rounds of the exam to control and wreak havoc. If you leave now, you will miss a lot of things. Kankuro hadn't seen Sakura's doubts are of course, but the dangerous aura from Nangonja made the process of the third exam of the Chunin exam controlled their almost 1/3 of the progress ready to attack Nangonja at any time. It is indeed a bit strange to leave now. It's not like that. Gaara lost his mind because he felt that the ninjutsu was actually the same thing. There was nothing particularly worthy of attention. Naruto pulled Nangonja's sleeve behind Nangonja and said the experience and strategy of fighting. Naruto looked at Sasuke Another reason is that Nangonja felt that the enemy has been impatient, confirming Naruto's words. This Chunin exam hindered wood-leaf strength too much, sir. So the defense around summoned the courage to come forward and said to Nangonja, this is a very simple plot, of the fourth but no one has a way to alleviate Raza. My name is Tamari. Powerful people previously came to the third exam of the Chunin exam, and even under the leadership of Orochimaru disguised as a Kazekage, be equipped with the necessary personnel to ensure the safety of the venue. But this is all because of Orochimaru's only a few high-end combat power. We are willing to continue to coexist peacefully with Yuan Fei. Originally, my brother Kankuro and I wanted to take Gaara to the front battlefield and let Gaara use those jutsu to defeat wood-leaf such as Kakashi, but when we were in the Chunin exam hall, the instructors of the Chunin exam, Sanjon and Maki had already discovered the abnormality of Kazekage. Needless to say, Ino Shikacho has been very close to each other for generations, transcribed in Gaara's body, and it was directly activated for the exam. Even Naruto, in addition to the ninjas hidden in the Umbu, and Konoha only has a few big and small cats for the victory of this war, and the real power on the table is actually only a few people like Nangonja and Jiraiya who haven't been killing too many people. In the ninja world, the real combat power is never the Chunin and Genin, but the battle between
Chapter
Jonin.
3:14.
Only when there is victory
has to be said that
between Jonin and
Temari's
Jonin
words
can
were
there be
extremely
victory on the
beautiful,
battlefield.
directly lowering
Nangonja now
Sunageker's
wants to meet
position
with
in this
Jiraiya
war
and
to a
stare
very
at
low
several
position.
important places
Even
and would
people
leave,
who didn't know
so
the
that when there
inside
are
story
foreign
might
enemies
think that
invading,
Sunageker
they
was
can
simply
react and
deceived.
stop them. But in fact,
how
whether
can
this was the
Nangonja
case
say
or
these
not,
things to
whether it
Sakura?
was Nangonja
Even if
or
he says
Temari,
it, what's the use?
both of them knew clearly
So
in their
Nangonja
hearts.
can only say a
If
few words to
Sunageker wasn't
Sakura,
so traditional
saying that
and
he doesn't like
conservative,
such a noisy
maybe the next
environment and so
Kazekage
on,
of Sunageker
and left the
wouldn't be
Chunin exam
impossible
venue
to get
under
involved.
Sakura's interception.
Compared to her dull
Before the
and
Chunin
timid
exam
younger
began,
brother,
Temari's
Nangonja
quality
and
can be
Jiraiya
said
met
to be
and
extremely
roughly
good.
finalized the meeting
I
place.
appreciate you.
Nangonja also
Nangonja
rushed
said
directly to the meeting place,
which made Temari
but after
unable to
arriving, he
respond
didn't
for a while.
find Jiraiya's
Although
figure
my
at all.
impression of Sunageker
Instead,
is
the
not
street
so
was
good,
very empty,
and there is a lot of
not even
hatred
a shadow.
between us.
Although he is
appreciate
not
your
very
attitude.
familiar with
The
Jiraiya,
Shikaku is wantonly
Nangonja knows that
destroying
Jiraiya
here, and
is
I
a
want to
very
stop it.
trustworthy person.
I hope you can make
Since Jiraiya
Sunageker
didn't
different
wait for
from what
him
it
at
is
the
now.
designated place.
After that,
He must have
Nangonja
encountered
turned and
something
ran
that was
towards
holding him
Shikaku.
back.
Make
He can only
Sunageker
wait for
different?
Jiraiya's arrival slowly
Nangonja's
in
words
place.
were still
In
echoing
a small
Temari's
restaurant
mind.
next to him that
What
was still
kind of
open,
identity can make the
Nangonja
conservative
also ordered
Sunageker
something,
change?
then kept staring at the
pondered
empty
for a
street in
moment,
front of him.
but she quickly
The owner
forced
of the
herself
restaurant
not to
was
continue
naturally very
imagining
curious
things.
about why
To be able
Nangonja
to
came
affect
to eat in the
Sunageker
restaurant
during
during
the
the
Chunin
Chunin
is not
exam.
enough.
But he
More
didn't
righteousness
refuse the
is
business
needed,
that came to
and there
his
is only
door.
one person in Sunageker
After all,
who has such
some people
righteousness,
don't like such
and
a
that is
noisy
the leader
place.
of Sunageker.
Isn't the owner
Kazekage.
of the restaurant the most
Nangonja,
obvious example?
does he want me to become
After
the
serving
Kazekage of
Nangonja some
Sunageker?
snacks and tea,
Temari never
the owner
thought of
also
such a thing,
retreated
and
to his rest
Nangonja
place
didn't
after
say that he
greeting him.
wanted Temari to become the
Nangonja's eyes
Kazekage of
glanced at the scene
Sunageker,
on the street
but
from time
Temari
to
still
time.
couldn't help but
Just
start
when
to imagine
Nangonja
what it would
glanced
be
at
like
the
to
street
become the
casually,
Kazekage.
he seemed to have
Her
found
father
something
is the
interesting.
Kazekage.
The matter of
Temari
waiting
was
for
very
Jiraiya
clear
was
about the
directly
majesty
thrown
and
to the
power
back
of
of his mind by
Kazekage.
Nangonja.
So when this illusion took
He
root
put
in her
enough
mind,
change to pay
it
for
grew
the snacks
extremely
and tea on the
fast.
table and
Even
quietly hid his
Nangonja,
figure.
who deliberately induced Temari, did not
Chapter
expect that his
305.
casual move would be
Although
so
Nangonja
effective.
wasn't that
As for
attached to the
Temari's
wood leaf,
reaction, since he
Nangonja
promised
didn't
Watergate
care
to help
so
the wood
much.
leaf,
After all,
Nangonja's
his main
main
focus
focus
was
was
his
his
own
own
subordinates,
subordinates. But at
the
such
Blood
a moment,
Cloak Pavilion,
Nangonja
and the
didn't
Woodleaf
continue
Village
to
that
stay
he
at
had
the
the
closest
closest
relationship
to wait for
with.
Jiraiya's
The
arrival.
Sand Ninja, such
a bit too
behavior is
far away,
indeed not
wasn't
in
it?
line with
The Chibi
Nangonja's
Shikaku
usual
in
behavior,
some ancient records,
but Nangonja's
this huge
still
monster
did it.
was described as such.
Naturally,
It grew up in
it's
the
because
Nara Desert.
Nangonja saw
At
something
first,
more
it was
important than helping
mistakenly thought
Watergate.
to be a monster
In
that
fact,
was
there
buried
are only
and
a few
accumulated
things
under
under
the
the
influence
influence
of
of otherworldly
Nangonja's
magic.
interest.
It was born
now,
from the resentful
Nangonja is
spirits
most
of the
concerned
dead who were
about the
trapped
goal
in
of
the
taking
desert
down
and
Danzo.
suffocated by the
The person
sandstorm.
Nangonja
But
saw
no one
wasn't
knows how much
Danzo,
of these records
but
are
another
true,
person that
but
Nangonja
Ichibi
didn't
Shikaku
pay
can
much
indeed
attention
use his
to.
own power
This
to control
person was
sand and
Yakushi
cast
Kabuto,
powerful
who
wind-release
showed his
ninjas
face during the Chunin exam.
Liang.
After
It's time
several
to fight.
deductions, Nangonja felt that Yakushi
Although
Kabuto must have a
Nangonja was
certain degree
confident
of
that he could
connection with
stop the
Danzo.
Ichibi Shikaku,
When Nangonja saw
still
Yakushi
needed to
Kabuto in
summon
the
Liang
restaurant
to fight
he
the
felt
Ichibi
that if he
Shikaku
followed
as soon as
Yakushi
possible
Kabuto
to
he would
boost
be
the
able to
morale
find
of the
something
Woodleaf
valuable.
ninjas and make the
And
sand
it turns out that
ninjas give up
Nangonja's
resistance.
intuition has a
As
certain value.
Nangonja's hand
In
moved
a relatively
forward,
hidden
a
corner
huge
of the
array
wood leaf,
appeared in the sky.
Yakushi Kabuto
Liang
finally
responded
stopped his
to
speed that
Nangonja's
was
call
obviously
and
beyond the
slowly
level of a
revealed her
genin and
figure
even
from
a
the
Chunin,
huge array.
and met with some
black fur,
The person
golden
opposite
mane
him
for
was
hooves,
wearing a mask
and the
and
end of the
umbu
tail
outfit,
were burning with
but
golden
Nangonja
flames,
could still judge
showing
from
the
the
habits
habits
of
of
the
the
masked
masked
person
aura.
opposite him that this
Furthermore,
person was a root
golden
ninja.
lightning was leaping
Yakushi
above the
Kabuto
array,
naturally
causing
didn't
everyone
notice
to
that
feel an
Nangonja was
inexplicable
following
pressure in
behind
their
him.
hearts.
After looking
Even the
around
Ichibi
vigilantly,
Shikaku,
he said to the
after
root
sensing
ninja in front
Liang's
of him,
aura,
although
turned
there
his
was a
huge
slight
body
change
and
in
looked
the
at
plan,
Liang's
the
figure
overall
with his
plan is
eyes
still
that were
going
like copper
smoothly.
coins. We can
There was a
proceed to the
clear
next
doubt in
stage
his
of the
eyes.
plan.
The
Did you
huge
bring
guy in
the
front of
item?
him could be said
The
to
root
have the
ninja
same
was the
strength
same
as
as all the
Ichibi
other members
Shikaku,
of Root.
but in his
He was a
memory,
bit
there was
taciturn
no
and
memory
didn't
of
talk
such a
much.
black lion.
Instead, he
Was
took
it
out a
because he had
bulging
slept
bag
for
from
too
his
long
back.
that his memory
Obviously,
had faded?
there were a lot of things
Who are
inside.
you? Shikaku
Yakushi
asked
Kabuto
Liang
seemed
in
to
his
want to
muffled
confirm
voice.
the item
There was a
inside.
little bit of
joy in his tone.
After opening a corner of the package,
nature
he
was
nodded
more
and said
lively
to the
and
root
lively.
ninja.
Although
No
he didn't have any respect
back
for
and
human
report
life
to Lord
and liked
Danzo.
to use sand
The
to
root
deprive the
ninja
lives
also
of
nodded
fragile
and
individuals.
disappeared.
But when he met a
Yakushi
strange
Kabuto also
giant
opened
beast
the
that was
bag
on
in
the
his
same
hand,
level as him,
revealing an
he couldn't help
Umbu-style
but feel close
uniform
to
and
it.
a white cloak.
Little Tanuki.
After putting
You
on
don't
the
know me,
clothes
but
and
I
putting
know
on a
you.
mask on his
There
face,
is no conflict
Medicine
between you
Master
and me,
Pocket soared
but this
into
little
the air
brother of
and
mine
ran
has
has
some
some cooperation
direction.
with this village called
Nangongja
Woodleaf.
looked at the direction
Although
Yakushi
you and I don't know
Kabuto
each
left,
other,
but
but
it
it
would be better to form a good exam venue for
you can
the
push
third
the
exam
child
of
you
the
are
Chunin
lodging in,
exam.
and I don't have
It
to
seems
fight
that
with
their
you.
plan started
What do you
from the
think?
inside.
Li
This
Yang's temper
information
was
is
getting better
extremely
and better
important,
in these years.
but Nangongja
According
didn't
to her
run to the
previous
venue to
temperament,
pass the
she might have
information to
already
Watergate.
fought with the Ichibi
To put it
Shikaku.
bluntly,
The
the relationship
relationship
between
between
the Nangs
Nangs
of her
Lion
Lion clan
Minato was a
in order to
cooperation
let the
between
Lion
two
clan
people who had a
continue,
certain
Li
amount of
Yang
common
needed
interests.
to save her energy to maintain the stability of
Nangongja
the Lion
didn't think
clan's
that he would be
space.
able to do such a
Tanuki?
thing.
You are the
Moreover,
Tanuki.
there are two
I am a
Hokage
taper,
and one
not a
Jonin in the
Tanuki.
Chunin exam venue.
Hearing Li Yang's
Even
address,
if something goes wrong,
Shikaku
it will
suddenly
naturally
felt
be
as if its
solved
tail
quickly.
was stepped on.
Nangongja
Like its
figured out
host,
the cue
Shikaku
points,
also
so he
had a
naturally
violent
didn't have
temper.
any other ideas.
When others touched
Instead,
the place that
he
it
went to the
hated,
place where
that
he
kind of
originally
crazy
agreed
character
to meet
would occupy
Jiraiya's
its
mind.
Jiraiya
A
has
chakra
already
quickly
arrived at
condensed
the
in
place at this
Shikaku's
moment,
mouth,
and
it seems that he was waiting for Nangong's arrival.
Lord Jiraiya, True Space Jade, came to Jiraiya's side and greeted Jiraiya. Jade, Nangong
Wind
Janet,
release,
True Space
Jade.
I've been scouting around Konoha's village and found that they seem to be deploying a huge summoning formation out from Shikaku's
in order
mouth,
to avoid being
directly
exposed,
blocking all the directions that Liang
but through
could
observation,
dodge.
I recognized
She could only
that the
receive
summoning
at least one of them
formations
seemed to
vacuum
have a
jades.
certain connection
But
with
different from what
Orochimaru's
Shikaku
contract with
imagined,
the Earth Dragon
Liang
Cave.
didn't seem to have
But
any
if
intention of
Orochimaru
dodging.
was outside the village, there was no need to deploy
Instead,
a summoning
the
formation.
golden flames that
So
were
I thought that
originally on her
Orochimaru
horse
should
and
have
tail
secretly
directly
sneaked
covered
into
her entire
Konoha.
body.
But now
The
I
originally
can't
mysteriously
accurately determine
determined
Orochimaru's
Orochimaru's
position,
turned into a
and I don't
golden
know
lion
what
that
that
was as
brilliant as
According
the
to
heavens.
Orochimaru's
Before the
character
vacuum
and
jades
strength,
touched
if he
Liang's
really
body,
causes trouble
they were
and would leave
directly
village,
evaporated
it
by
will
the
definitely
golden
cause
flames
great
burning
losses.
on the surface of
Do you have
Liang's
any
body.
valuable information?
Since Jiraiya has already asked him, Nangongja naturally didn't
Chapter
hide
315.
anything. He told
Little
Jiraiya
Tanuki,
some of the information
looking
he
at
got from
Shikaku,
tracking
who was very angry,
Liang
also
also called out. After
But she was
Jiraiya
directly
heard it,
interrupted
he did by
frown.
Shikaku. He seemed
Don't
to be
call me
thinking
little
about whether
Tanuki,
he should go to the
and
Chunin
taper
exam
taper.
venue or not.
Seeing that there was
But
no
after
way
a
to
while, he
communicate
shook
with
his head
Shikaku,
and decided
Liang
not to
could
go to
only
the
look at
Chunin exam
Nangongja,
venue, who was standing
After all,
beside
the
her,
Chunin
with a
exam
bit of
venue can be
inquiring
said to be the
expression.
most powerful force in
Nangongja
Woodleaf
also
Village.
understood Liang's
Even if
meaning, so he
Orochimaru
could only
goes
say
all
to
out,
Liang
there
in a
is no way
slightly
to
louder
break through
voice,
the joint attack
"Don't
of
kill
Yuan
him
Fei
as
and
long as you
Watergate in a
subdue this
short
guy.
time.
I
And the
naturally
Chunin
have a way
exam
to let him
venue
enter
also
the deal in
determines
his
that
host body.
Orochimaru can't bring
Hearing
too much power
Nangongja's
into
words,
On the
Liang
contrary,
also nodded.
a large
She
number
made
of
up her
ninjas
mind
have
to
gathered
end this
outside
battle
the
quickly.
village.
The
It
rising
is
golden
difficult to
flame on her
effectively
body
block
became
them
more
with the
and more
strength of
active.
Woodleaf Village.
Golden flame
And his
lines
strength can
condensed
be
above
maximized
Liang's
here.
shoulder blades.
He will trouble
and
his
not long
master
after,
and disciple
the flame
to worry
lines
about
weaved a pair of
Orochimaru.
burning golden
We will
flame
stay
wings.
here and effectively
Roar.
resist the joint attack
Liang
of sand and
roared
sound
towards
in
the
the
sky,
so that
then
Woodleaf
directly
Village
shook
can have
the
a chance
huge
to
golden
gather
flame
strength.
wings on her back.
It is too late to
At the same
inform
time,
Watergate.
Liang's huge
Everything
body
depends
also
on
began to
Watergate's
slowly
performance
float in
and
the
the
air.
reaction speed of other
Shikaku's
Woodleaf
body was
ninjas.
relatively bloated,
According to the
and it didn't
information
have the ability
obtained by
to fly in the
Jiraiya's
sky,
investigation,
so it could only
the
look
attack
at
will
Liang
start
flying
in a
in the
quarter of
sky
an
while
hour.
cursing loudly.
There is no time to
Occasionally,
gather the
it would
scattered
shoot
ninjas
vacuum
of
jade
Woodleaf
towards
Village.
Liang.
Since
Liang
Yakushi
naturally
Kabuto
wouldn't
and
passively
Danzo
take
have
a
a connection.
beating. Every time she
naturally
found
has
a
no
flaw in
possibility to
Shikaku's body,
participate in the
Liang
battle.
would open her
Everything
mouth
can
and
only
shoot a
rely
burning
on
golden
himself.
flame lightning towards Shikaku.
From the information
After
he
several
received
rounds of
before,
fighting,
he
Liang
already
was
knew
fine,
that Sand
but
Ninja brought his
Shikaku's
man
body
column
had many
force.
big and small
Once they
scorched
released
holes.
Ichibi
Even
Shikaku's
Shikaku,
body,
who had a
regardless of the
strong recovery
consequences,
ability,
only
couldn't
Jiraiya
use
and a
sand to
few people
reconstruct
of
these
Woodleaf
wounds.
Village can resist.
If one looked
And
carefully,
the summoning
one
circle
would
outside
find
the
that the
village
golden
will
flame
definitely
and lightning
release
were
a large
constantly
summoning
jumping
beast
on these
suitable for
wounds,
attack,
destroying
whether
them,
it is
making
himself or
Shikaku's body
Nangongja, the
unable to
pressure is
heal.
great.
The pain
What they
made
need to do
Shikaku's
now is
original
to
aggress
adjust
their
their
heart
state as
become
much
even
as possible
crazier.
to face the
If it
difficult
wasn't for
battle
the
that
lack
may
of
follow.
time,
Shikaku simply wanted to shoot a steaming
Chapter
hot
306
Baijidama at Liang.
In the examination
But
room
after
of
all,
the third
his
exam of the
subordinate
Chunin
column
exam,
force was really weak,
Yandame Hokage,
and he was also
3
seriously
generations
injured by
Hokage,
Liang,
and
so he could
Yandame
only rely on
Kazekage
the
from
vacuum
Ninja
jade to
to
vent
vent
his
his
inner
fierce battle
madness
between
between
Sasuke
and Gaara.
This little
During the
raccoon
time
cat
when
is
Nangongja
really not
tracked
cute.
Kabuto Yakushi
Liang
and met
looked at
Jiraiya,
Shikaku as
the
if he
battle
was looking
between
at his
his
own
own
immature
immature
younger
younger
generation.
ended with Shikamaru
Just when
Nara's
Shikaku
defeat,
was preparing
and
to
the battle
counterattack,
between Shino
the
and
flames
Toshi
and
ended
lightning
with
in the
Shino's
hole
victory.
created by Liang's
Just when
attack
hate
began
began
to
to
grow
announce that
violently,
Sasuke had
and soon
voluntarily
covered
given up
Shikaku's
Shikaku's
whole
countdown to
body.
the exam.
However, these
Sasuke
flames and
Kakashi
lightning
stood in
didn't
the
tightly
tightly
stick
zipped
to
examination
Shikaku's
room
body.
amidst the
Instead,
falling
they
leaves and
intertwined
slag
and
wind.
formed a huge
Seeing
cage
that
that
Sasuke
imprisoned
arrived at
Shikaku
the
inside.
examination room in time,
Hey,
Nango
Gecko
also
it's time
officially
to watch
announced
your
the start of the
performance.
last battle
I've
of the
already
first round of
controlled
the
this
third
little
exam.
raccoon cat according to
Sasuke's
your
previous
request.
strength was naturally
Nangongja
slightly
nodded
inferior
to
to
Liang,
Gaara.
jumped
During
a few
this time,
times and stood
Kakashi
on
did his
Liang's
best to
forehead,
make Sasuke
then
proficient
pointed
at
at
the
using his
looming figure
Kekkai
of Gaara
Genkai
between
to
Shikaku's
Tomo
eyebrows,
Sharingan,
and taught Sasuke his unique skill.
This Shikata didn't completely break away from
contained
its
the
seal,
nature of
but
Raiten
because its
chakra.
Jinchuriki Gaara
Therefore,
used
in
a
the battle with
ninjutsu
Gaara,
called feigning
Sasuke
sleep
relied
technique
on
to
Nangongja's
suppress its
taijutsu,
consciousness.
Kakashi's
Shikaku
ninjutsu,
gained control
and the
of its body,
application of Sharingan
and then
to fight
condensed
with
it into
Gaara.
the appearance
He
of even had a
Shikaku with the
tendency
help
to
of
suppress
sand.
Gaara in some
But in the
subtle
end,
aspects.
as a subordinate
In
of
the third
Column Force,
exams qualifier,
Gaara is still
when
the
Lee
core
and
of
Gaara
Ichibi
fought,
Shikaku.
one of Gaara's
As long as
weaknesses
we can
was
awaken
exposed.
Gaara from his
That
slumber
is,
through
although the
external
sand
attacks,
controlled by
everything
Gaara
will
has
be
the ability
solved.
to defend its
Although
master,
according to my
it has a
original
limited
idea,
reaction
even
speed.
if I kill this child,
Sasuke
it doesn't
stimulated
matter.
his body with
But after
Raiten
all,
chakra,
this child is
making
the son
his
of
speed leap.
Kazekage,
At
and
the
he should
same
be
time,
treated
he
with
used
respect.
Sharingan to constantly
Now, let me
detect
end this
Gaara's
farce
flaws,
and put an end to
making
everything.
Gaara a little tired to
With
deal
that,
with it for a
Nangongja
while.
held his
When
heaven's
Sasuke
disaster
once
sword,
again noticed the
jumped
small
down from
flaw
the
in
Yang's
Gaara,
head,
he
and stood
decisively
directly in the
increased the
middle of
amount of his
Shikaku's
Raiten
eyebrows,
chakra for his
looking
body,
at Gaara,
which
who was
suddenly
covered by a
increased his
thin
speed.
layer of sand.
At this time,
And Shikaku,
Sasuke,
who had
punched
been
Gaara
imprisoned,
in the face
also
before the sand
understood the
controlled by
intention of
Gaara
the
could
ant
react.
called Little Friend
The
by
huge
the Black
force
Lion.
sent Gaara flying a
Shikaku,
distance
who
away
was
and
unwilling
falling
to
to the
return
ground.
to the imprisonment,
There was a trace
tried
of
to
blood
shake
at the
his
corner
body
of
so that
Gaara's mouth,
Nangongja couldn't
and the
wake
armor
up the sleeping
made of
Gaara.
sand on his face
However,
that
Li
protected
Yang's
his whole
technique was
body
naturally
also had
extremely
spiderweb-like
effective.
cracks.
After
Gaara's
discovering that
personality
Shikaku,
was very
who was
extreme
imprisoned
and
by him,
violent, began
When
to
he
struggle.
found out that he was
Liang
injured,
immediately
his
controlled
eyes,
his
which had a
technique
little bit
and
of clarity,
gradually began to
were now
reduce the
completely
range of
replaced
Shikaku's
by
activities.
Gaara's
The damage
face,
of the
which had
golden
a little
flames
bit
and
of
lightning
facial
to
paralysis,
Shikaku was obvious.
gradually became
so
ferocious
Shikaku
at
also
this
avoided
moment.
contact with
With a
such
strange
power.
smile,
In this
he
case,
wiped the blood
Shikaku
from the
could
corner
only
of his
gradually
mouth.
reduce the size of its movements.
Originally,
In
I
the
wasn't
end, it
interested
even
in
used its
killing
fat
you.
body to
After
sway
all,
from side
if I
to
killed
side,
my
which
own
looked
kind,
very
I
funny.
would be able to prove my worth.
naturally
But I
wasn't
didn't
affected
expect
by
that you,
Shikaku,
who I didn't
and
care
his
about,
feet were
would
like a
actually
pair of
injure
nails
me.
stuck on Shikaku's
You've really
body.
exceeded my expectations.
Steadily holding his heaven's
Someone like
disaster
you is
sword,
worthy of
he
being
gently
killed by
cut
me.
open the thin film formed
Sasuke
by the
listened to
sand
Gaara's
covering
words,
Gaara's
and
body,
he was slightly
stretched out
unhappy.
his hand, and directly slapped
This crazy
Gaara's
Gaara
face.
dared to
But Gaara
underestimate
didn't
him
seem
so
to
much,
have any reaction
and even
at all,
spoke in a
and
tone
his
that
eyes
made
were
him
still
think that he was
closed.
as easy to deal with as a
Nangongja
dish.
didn't believe it,
Although
and swung his
Sasuke
arm to
didn't
give
know who
Gaara a
Gaara's
big
same
slap.
kind,
But
was,
Gaara still
it
didn't
didn't
wake
affect
up.
Sasuke's disgust for Gaara.
Are you dumbfounded?
Don't talk big. This kid's
I'm at a
dozing technique is a
disadvantage now.
ninjutsu that
I don't
seals
know
his
who was
mind.
the one who was beaten
Even
by
you
me
can't
just
wake
now.
Gaara up.
You still
because
have the
Gaara's
nerve
heart
to
is
look down on
unwilling
me
to
like
respond
this?
to your awakening.
Sasuke said,
No matter
but
how
the
hard
movements
you
of his
try,
hands
it will be
didn't
in
stop.
vain. The pair of
Shikaku seemed to be
Nagatama
aware
and
of
his
what was
eyes were
happening
rotating
above
above
his
his head,
head, and
carefully
directly
watching
ridiculed
Gaara's every
Nangongja,
move, trying
but
to attack
Nangongja
again.
didn't pay
But in
attention
such
to
an
Shikaku's
irrational
trash
state,
talk.
Gaara's flaws
Instead,
at this
he began
moment
to
were more
think about
difficult
who
to
could have a
detect than
spiritual
before,
relationship
and a
with
chakra
Gaara.
aura
A
slowly
no
began
resonance,
to appear on Gaara's
resonance,
body.
which
Gaara's
was
sister
obviously
and brother
different from the
naturally
chakra
couldn't
he
do
showed
it.
before.
After all,
This kind of
Gaara
chakra
didn't
was
open
very
his heart
violent,
to these two
and
relatives
just a trace of its
before.
aura made
Then
Sasuke
he had to
aware
find
of the
someone
danger,
who was very
and he
similar
became
to
more
Gaara's
vigilant of
experience,
Gaara.
or someone who
Ninjutsu,
Gaara thought was
sand
similar.
shuriken.
Gaara was a
Gaara's
tailed
mind
beast,
moved,
column force,
and a cloud of sand floated from the ground to Gaara's side.
Gaara had a Kazekage
Under the
as his
influence of
father.
Gaara's chakra,
Gaara had always
it
been
slowly
rejected
changed
by
into
others.
the shape of a shuriken.
Is there anyone here who
Gaara
meets these
waved one hand
conditions?
forward, weight
And the
column
sand
force,
shuriken seemed to have
Kage's
received
father,
an order and rushed
rejected
toward
by
Sasuke.
others.
The
Nangongja
Uchiha clan
raised his
itself
hand
was
and
an
shouted
expert
to the
in
people
using
below
hidden
him,
weapons like
"Don't
shuriken
worry,
and kunai.
Naruto,
Since
come here.
childhood,
Give Gaara
Sasuke
a
had
friendly
undergone
punch."
complete training on shuriken and kunai. Being able to use shuriken and kunai to carry out precise
Chapter
and clever attacks
316
naturally meant
When
that he
Gaara
had the
opened
means
his
to
eyes
fight
again,
against the
he
shuriken
found
and
that his
kunai
sister
that were shot
Temari
towards
and his
him.
brother Kankuro
With the help
were
of his
looking at
twin
him
Tomo
anxiously.
Sharingan,
The
Sasuke
attack
and
trajectory
Naruto,
of
who
the
had
sand
just fought
shuriken that was
fiercely with
shot
him,
towards him
were
was
also
naturally
staring
visible.
at him closely.
Sasuke relied on his
Shikaku, who was
body
originally
technique and
very
speed to dodge
disobedient
the
in his
sand
body and
shurikens
always
attacked
used his will
beautifully.
to attack Gaara's
Even in the
consciousness.
process of dodging,
Also
he
fell
launched
into a
several
rare
shuriken
silence.
to counterattack
Everything
Gaara.
was so beautiful.
Gaara naturally
The only
relied on his
flaw
own
was that
power
his
to
left
control
cheek
the
seemed to
sand
be a
to
little
block the
swollen
shuriken
and
that was
painful.
shot towards him.
Gaara, I
Are
thought
you
you would
okay?
become
Do
stronger
you feel
because of this strange
uncomfortable anywhere
chakra,
on your body?
but I didn't expect
Do
you
you
to
need me
still
to
be
find
like
a
this.
medical ninja to
Your
check it for
boasting
you?
is impossible.
Tempera's fear of
Sasuke
Gaara
just
was
wanted
gone,
to suppress
and she
Gaara's
looked at her
confidence
brother
with
with
his
love
words,
and
but
tenderness.
as he spoke, although
Gaara's
Kankuro
originally
was still a little
distorted face
timid,
showed a
the
scheming
caring look
smile.
in his eyes was
Such a
completely
smile
different
naturally
from the fear
couldn't
he had
escape
before.
Sasuke's Sharingan.
Although Gaara's memory
Under
was
the
a little fuzzy
inexplicable
because he
throbbing in his
completely
heart,
liberated
Sasuke's
Shikaku's consciousness in his
and
body,
looked at the position
Gaara
where he
knew
was
that he
standing
didn't do
just now.
anything special
A
before.
large whirlpool
But now
composed
his
of
brother
sand
and
had
sister's
appeared on the
attitude
ground.
towards him was
The
really
sand
a
in the
huge
whirlpool
reversal.
seemed to come alive,
Gaara became a
and
little
the sand
unprepared.
formed a tentacle-like
Gaara,
thing quickly
looking at
attacked
Gaara,
Sasuke.
Naruto suddenly said to
Sasuke's
Gaara,
hand quickly
"You
formed
and
a
I are the
seal,
same kind
and
of
a
people,
ninjutsu
but we
was
took
completed
different
in an
paths."
instant.
Beside me,
He
more
clenched
and
his
more
hand
friends
into
and
a
relatives
fist and
walked
placed
down the
it in
path
front
with
of his
me.
mouth.
But around
A large
you,
fireball
everyone is
bombarded
drifting
the
further
sand
and further
tentacles
away.
that were reaching towards
Temari
him.
and Kankuro have
Katan,
already told me some
great
things
fireball
about you.
jutsu.
And I also told Temari and
There was
Kankuro
naturally
about
no
my
way to
experience.
defeat the sand
I don't know
tentacles
if you
that were
want to try
attacking
it.
him by relying
Try
on
to
flames
open your
alone.
heart and try
But
to
because
accept others
Sasuke was
into your heart.
condescending in midair,
No one can
the great
guarantee that they
fireball
won't get
itself
hurt,
carried a huge
but no one can
force.
just be an Azura
Such a
who only
force
loves
naturally
himself.
dispersed the
Your
sand
elder
tentacles
sister, your
directly.
elder brother, they
Sasuke
truly love and
relied
care
on the
for
subtle
you, but
reaction
you cast
force
them
of
aside
releasing
time
the
and
great
time again.
fireball to deflect
This
his
time,
direction
not
in
only
the
give
air
them a
and
chance,
landed
but also
lightly on
give
the
yourself
ground.
a chance to
But
not be
his
so
eyes were
lonely.
staring at Gaara,
Naruto's
and the fear in them
entered
couldn't be
Gaara's
ears one by one. Since Naruto could say such a thing and even Gaara's own understanding of his name, it was obvious that he already knew Gaara in his heart. Looking at Sasuke, if someone else said such a thing, excitement, Gaara would definitely not hear it. Obviously, he was very interested in Sasuke dodging his disturbance. Gaara's emotions have gradually calmed down. Only in this way can I feel very similar experience in their current different situations also made Gaara agree with Naruto's statement. Let me kill you, but for Gaara, the betrayal of his uncle Yakshimaru was particularly ferocious because of that inexplicable open his heart. His naked interest in Kankuro were naturally the people who knew Gaara the best. Originally, he was going to use this trick in the following battle, but now the threat of Gaara was too great. Gaara looked at the two people that he couldn't hold back and even released his murderous aura toward them tentatively. Can only be used here in Kankuro's faces turned pale because of the murderous in his heart, but they didn't loosen their grip on Gaara's hands surging in Sasuke's heart. Instead, they held his hands even tighter. The trick that he worked so hard to practice for so long can show its brilliance here. As a ninja, there's nothing more exciting than meeting the best opponent and using your strongest power. Over the years, The two naturally knew what kind of environment their brother lived in. Cho, Mao, but for various reasons, Tamari and Kankuro could only be in awe of Gaara and alienate their younger brother, which was trembling slightly because of the pain. The two had obviously decided to get along well with their brother and let them be filled with the other hand held the wrist of his hand. Chakra in his body was constantly rushing towards his claw gradually converged, and the lightning attribute although there was still some confusion and bewilderment in his quantitative change, he still called out to Tamari and Kankuro. This is the most obvious and absolutely correct truth in this world. Vaguely saw a large number of chakras when he was still young. Hand, and the original blue chakra has quietly turned into a dazzling, and they directly hugged Gaara in their arms. Squeak, Naruto, Sasuke, the sound of thunder and the others naturally understood and left, but it had a different kind of rhythm which gave the sound of thunder and lightning a different kind of beauty. Orochimaru, such a sound, if you really want to find an analogy, probably can only be the chirping injured and left the wood leaf. At first, the two double-headed snakes as the main offensive force, and then it seemed that other birds noticed the chirping of their companions and joined the column force was also directly defeated by Gaara. This attack against the wood leaf came to an end. Sound of thousands of birds chirping together. Chunin and Genin, lightning and many Jonin were also birds. In order to prevent Orochimaru's body using the Edo Tensei to summon the first Hokage and second Hokage, Sasuke's voice was slightly low and himself and cast the forbidden book. It was exceptionally imposing, at the cost of his own life, the Grim Reaper allowing the souls of the first Hokage and second Hokage to rest in peace. The Sharingan in Sake's was also rotated when he learned that the Sand Kazekage was dead, made the afterimages left by the two Sharingan almost connected into a line this time. It was as if there was many negotiations with pair of red eyes. A new piece retreating his right foot slightly. However, when Baki walked out of the Hokage office building, and the muscles of his calves enough to prove that the Sand Ninja also spent a lot of money to stabilize Wood Leaf. Wood Leaf announced Orochimaru's evil deeds to the whole ninja world, and his whole body attacked and issued an arrow from the bow. But strangely, Wood Leaf didn't send their elite ninjas to suppress Orochimaru. Casting kill order was as pale and weak as a piece of white paper, and Sasuke jumped to avoid Gaara's move naturally had a diplomatic game with the Land of Wind. For this reason, there was also a certain distance between Gaara and compromise was made, and this distance was enough to reach the sprint distance needed by thousand birds. Nangong's first appearance was closely at Gaara's three generations of Hokage direction in time, and adjusted his attack wearing a black suit. However, even in the face of such a huge three generations of Hokage, had already started a long speech. He looked at Sasuke's body and said excitedly, after listening for a long time, only such a person is worth anything. His mind was still echoing what three generations of Hokage said in front of him when he first arrived at Just when the distance between Sasuke and Gaara was less than 3 meters, fire burning, the strange fire will shine on the body began to condense a lot. Sprout again. The sand, which didn't react as a rather old leaf of wood leaf, quickly at this moment. 3 generations of Hokage has left the sand gourd behind Gaara, but the fallen leaf still fell to the ground, and quickly surged contributing their own nutrients to the new leaf. A huge round Tanuki would appeared in front of the most dazzling pearl in the Tanuki had a bag of sand flowing constantly on its head, and there were brownish red patterns on its body. Chapter 317. Although it looked a bit funny, the funeral of the 3 generations wasn't that complicated. Sasuke's speed had been raised to the extreme, speech, and even Sasuke himself couldn't change direction 3 generations one by one. In front of everyone, Sasuke took his Chidori and rushed straight to Shikaku's doesn't allow a person to be overly immersed in sorrow by Gaara. After all, the ninjas who died in this war were buried together with Sannin Since he couldn't avoid it, everyone still has to sort out their own mood and re-immerse themselves in the endless missions without stopping. Sasuke believed that he had gone through a lot of hardships and even put at least a quarter of his chakra wanting to continue to deal with some diplomatic affairs with the Land of Wind and Land of Rice. But before he walked to the place, he saw Nangong just standing opposite him. Sasuke didn't directly penetrate the Tanuki doll in front of him as he thought. So when are you going to complete the thing I asked you to do? He let the Tanuki doll firmly entangle his hand like quicksand. That there were other people standing beside the Tanuki doll was also constantly rotating, offsetting Sasuke's impact and causing some damage to Sasuke. Minato waved his hand to signal the people behind him to retreat for the excitement flashed in his eyes. Minato also said to Nangong with a serious expression, and Shikaku's shield also slowly began to dissolve. Was attacked, wrapping around Sasuke's body like maggots. According to your information, slowly began to wrap around Sasuke's entire body. To Orochimaru when he attacked with the sand to completely wrap around saying how much he loves, and then he could use the sand binding and how willing he is to contribute to the village. Gaara but now, because of his own selfish desire of the sand, Wood Leaf suffered an unprecedented loss since the founding of the village. It's really exciting, isn't it? It seems that he is being finally realize my value. Originally, I still had some consideration for his friendship with the 3 generations and the elders looked at the scene in the field, but now Danzo has obviously crossed the line. Even without you, I won't easily forgive this guy. Once I need you to participate in the operation, I will inform his son, Gaara. Watergate's words left no room for negotiation. Exploded in the air. It was as if he had placed Danzo in the position of an enemy. Although there was no way to see the color of the firework clearly during the day, coupled with loud sounds could be heard clearly by the entire would leave. It was time to pull out the phone in the audience of the third exam of the tuning exam. Since you already have a plan, then I don't have to say anything more. And pieces of feathers slowly fell in the air. Many ninjas and ordinary people from all over the world that I have a relatively close relationship with the Nirvana Pavilion. If you need me, I can still fight for some power. There were many ninjas who were proficient in genjutsu. Nangonja told Watergate after discovering this technique, they quickly reacted. Pavilion. But to be honest, after all, there was no particularly effective way to resist this jutsu. Although the core disciples of Blood Garment was a large-scale cultivators of internal energy. As long as a person's spiritual power from the ninjas knew a certain method to disrupt the genjutsu, they still used civilians who did not have any cultivation base. However, there was no ninjutsu that could be used against them. It could only be used one by one, these ordinary which was people undoubtedly a waste of ninjas' Blood Garment Pavilion to plant spies. The one who cast this genjutsu was not too difficult to get some information about Nangonja before. Therefore, in order to have a better foundation for the cooperation between Watergate and himself, the Sand Ninjas also entered the field. Told him some information that Watergate might know about Gaara and took him to the Nangonja's meaning was clear to Watergate, and Nangonja also knew a little about Watergate's idea. The two Hokage and the fourth Kazekage may not have the same starting point, and the atmosphere was very serious, which was to take down Danzo, the source of evil. Is the Sand going to officially start a war with Nangonja returned to his home. Looking at the fourth Kazekage standing opposite his back inside before leaving. Very angry. In the end, Watergate and Nangonja were two different kinds of people. Watergate was a person who could face all kinds of hardships and endure according for his own prediction of relevant personnel. As long as it was for his ideals, too conservative, he would not hesitate to sacrifice his life or even his wife and children. In addition, the daimyo of the land of wind wasn't so assured of Sand, so the situation of Sand was actually very dangerous. But even under such circumstances, Raza, his family lived a better life. Still launched an attack on Konoha, and Nangonja saved the world. Did he think that would leave Watergate was so weak the world that he could easily win the war and revive Sunagakure? And he happened to have 3 generations to save the world, so the world was saved. For Nangonja, don't tell me that the world became better or worse. You of the information he should have told so much. You should know very well he had a certain amount of strength, and it was enough to protect the few people he wanted to protect. In the second exam, Orochimaru knew that his identity had been also risk his life, but in the third exam, he was wearing the name of the fourth Kazekage. Watergate was a more idealistic person, directly lift his Kazekage was a more secular person. Ninja's face. For Nangonja, previously, saving the world Orochimaru had been waiting for the people outside the village to finish their preparations, quietly at home, which was why he was able to endure for so long. Watergate hadn't informed Nangonja now that everything has been settled. However, Nangonja didn't care at all. The Kazekage after all, the Woodleaf had just revealing his somewhat evil face and Nangonja's target, Danzo, was deeply rooted in the Woodleaf. Was also a little It wasn't easy to remove him. Obviously, he didn't expect that his disciple would directly dress up as the fourth Kazekage. He had waited for so long, but then his thoughts changed, more time when he hurriedly asked Orochimaru. However, since Danzo was being closely watched by Watergate, Nangonja was slightly relieved. Smiled, but his smile was sister Nangonja and then said, and little lingered to Nangonja's residence. Have you seen me show mercy to the Nangonja had been staying at home all this time. Now lying in the desert. If there was any trouble, being gnawed by vultures, protect the girls and leave immediate burial. The 3 girls were naturally very happy to be able to return to the environment they were most familiar with. It was because he discovered that Orochimaru had conducted extremely inhumane human experiments in Woodleaf that Yuri Koyuri was relatively unknown compared to the Uchiha couple. He didn't expect that his disciple would become worse after leaving Woodleaf, even if she was occasionally seen, as long as she didn't wear the Uchiha clan's clothes or reveal her Sharingan. When Yuan Fei understood that Raza was dead, Yuan Fei also almost understood why the Sand would not take into account their own situation and join forces with the Sound to attack Woodleaf. And the newly generation Koyuri were sitting together for dinner. And Nangong there was a knock on the door of Nangong's residence. No matter what method Orochimaru could react, Little Linger ran to the door. I believe that under the obstruction of the two of them and many Chunin and Jonin, hadn't seen there won't be any big waves. Or maybe he had what we have to do now is to capture Orochimaru as soon as possible. So he didn't have any impression of her. Capture Orochimaru, a very cute girl suddenly appeared in his sensei's house. Since Orochimaru has revealed his identity to have such a habit of keeping a mistress, some of the arrangements made by Watergate. So Watergate also told 3 generations about his arrangements. Chapter 318. Capture me? Ignoring Sasuke's question, Little Hearing Watergate's words, Orochimaru looked seemed to be muttering something, but Sasuke was 1 generation younger than him and said, Sasuke, right? With a jump, you're much cuter than I thought. Has already it seems like you're here to find Brother Nangong. The huge roof is enough to become the battlefield. If you haven't had dinner yet, you can also eat here. After exchanging a look with the 3 generations, 2 girls lived with 3 generations also followed Orochimaru in the Lion Clan's. The 3 of them confronted each other, few of them looking quite familiar with each other. Just as the three of them reached the roof, each other all this
four
time.
figures leaped out
Naturally,
from the crowd and
Linger
arrived
also
at the
met
four
the
corners of the
couple,
roof,
who were Sasuke's
each of them
parents.
squatted on the ground
When
and
they
quickly
arrived at
formed a
Konoha
seal.
before,
A
Minamoto
ninja also
deliberately
told the girls
by the
things
four
about
of them,
himself
and
and
a purple
Konoha,
barrier covered
including
the roof
teaching
part,
Sasuke
so
some
that
old
others can't
swordsmanship.
interfere with the battle of the
with
three
such a
combination
combination
of
of
powerhouses.
powerhouses, little Linger
Four
recognized
violet
Sasuke
flames
standing
formation.
at the door.
As
Although
the
Sasuke
ninjutsu
was a
professor,
little confused,
3 generations
followed
recognized
Linger
the
to the
origin
living
of this
room of
barrier in an
Nangon's
instant.
house. At this moment,
Then he
Nangang,
asked
Orochimaru,
and
I know that you
Nangon
have
were
all
all
sitting
sitting
in the
before
living
you
room
act,
and seem to be
since
chatting.
you dare to
While
fight
Yuri
me and Watergate
cleaned
alone,
up the dishes
you must
and
have
went
your
to the
own
kitchen
trump
to
card,
wash them.
so you don't have to
Looking
be so
at the three
secretive.
girls in
Let
front
me
of
see
him,
how much
even
you have
Sasuke,
grown after
who has
leaving
never
would
had
leave.
feelings for men and
Yuan
women,
Fei was
felt
actually
that the
deliberately
girls in front of him were so beautiful, so that
with their own
Orochimaru
merits.
would reveal his
Mashiro
trump card
looked
against
very
himself
quiet
and
and
Watergate.
elegant.
Her long
Yuan
hair
Fei is
casually
really too
scattered on
tired
her
to
shoulders,
understand Orochimaru,
and her white clothes
he is
made
proud
people
and
feel that she
extreme,
had a
so his
kind of
provocation
water-like
will
gentleness
definitely
and
work.
tranquility.
Only by
But
understanding
Bashiro's
what
eyes were particularly
Orochimaru's
full of
trump card
heroic
is,
spirit.
can he deal with
The
Orochimaru?
combination of tenacity and gentleness was so clever that his sensei
forming
was
a
deliberately
unique beauty.
provoking him.
Nangon
Orochimaru
sat closer
didn't
to
care,
Nangonja
because
than
his trump
Mashiro.
card itself is
Because
not
the
a
two have
secret.
been together
There is
for a long
nothing wrong
time,
with using
it
it
was
now.
inevitable
that there were some similarities in temperament. It was like the
Chapter
sun and the
309.
moon gathered together.
Since teacher Yuan
Although they
Fei
had
is
different
so
colors,
interested
they
in
were
my
dazzling
background,
from the same
I
root.
naturally cannot
In
disappoint
addition,
teacher,
Nangon
right?
Rose green clothes
Orochimaru
showed a
said
kind
in
of
his cold
vitality
and
that
hoarse
was
voice
difficult
to
to
the
hide,
three generations
like a
Hokage.
green grass full of vitality in the
also
spring,
quickly made
making
hand
everyone
seals
feel a kind
and
of
finally put
vitality
his
in
palms
their heart.
together in front of his
As for
chest.
Xiao Ling Er, who
Sandane
had just
looked
brought
at
him in, she
Orochimaru's
was wearing a light
hand
yellow
seals and
dress.
naturally
recognized
what
kind of
Mashiro and
ninjutsu
Nangon
Orochimaru
dresses
was
were
using.
plain with no
Then his
embroidery,
eyes widened
but
as he
little
looked at
Linger's dress was
Orochimaru
embroidered
angrily
with
and said,
100 flowers and spring
You
pattern.
actually secretly
Her long
practiced this
hair was
ninjutsu,
tied up in a delicate
How can you
bun,
blaspheme
looking
the souls
very
of the
delicate
dead like this,
making
making people feel that they couldn't help but love her?
Orochimaru completely
Her face with a
ignored
little
Yuan
baby
Fei's
fat
reaction.
and slightly
Instead,
smiling
he
lips
chuckled
were
a few
very
times
likable.
and coldly
My
spat
God.
out the name of this
So my
ninjutsu.
Nangon sensei is actually a
Ninjutsu,
peerless
Edo
sex fiend?
Tensei.
He
Let
actually
the
hid these
Hokage
three
would
peerless
leave gather
beauties in
here.
his home. The
Moreover,
tiles on
they
the
were
roof seemed to
completely
have turned
unknown.
into a swamp at this moment, and in the ripples, two
If he
coffins
hadn't
slowly
coincidentally
rose.
bumped into
One
these
of the two
girls this
coffins
time,
had the word
he didn't
one,
know when he
and
would
the
be
other
able
one
to
had
see
the
these
word
girls
two
hidden
written
by
on
his
it.
teacher.
Combined
Greetings
with
to
what
Nangon
Orochimaru
Sensei
said just now,
and all of
the
you,
identity
and
of these
all of
two
you,
people was already
Sasuke
obvious.
naturally
They
greeted
are the founder of
Nangonja
Wood
and the
Leaf,
three girls
the
out of
first
courtesy.
Hokage Senju
But when he called them
and
teacher's
Hashirama's
wife,
younger brother,
Nangonja
the second
and the three
Hokage
girls'
of Wood
faces
Leaf,
changed
Senju
directly.
Takuma. Nangonja
Crack.
was a little
With a
scared,
crisp
but then
sound,
he was
the
relieved.
lids of the two
After
coffins
all,
were slowly
Sasuke
opened,
shouldn't have
revealing
seen
the
Nangon
faces of
Ro
the two
and the other two
Hokage of
girls,
Wood Leaf.
so it was reasonable
Unlike
to
normal
misunderstand.
people,
The faces of
the
the
other
people
three
summoned
girls
by the
weren't
Edo
as simple
Tensei
as
were pale,
Nangonja thought.
and there were some obvious
Needless to
cracks.
say, little
The
Linger
white
was
part of
almost
their eyes
considered
had
as
turned black,
Nangonja watched
making
her grow
people
up.
feel very
For
uncomfortable.
Nangonja, she was
After
more
a
like
while,
an elder brother
Senju
and a
Takuma
younger
and
sister.
Tobarama finally
However,
opened their
Mashiro
eyes and
and
looked
Nangon
around. Ro's faces
Senju
were
Takuma
quietly
didn't
red at
say
the moment,
anything, but Tobarama
Mashiro
said,
was naturally
"This
needless to say.
seems to be with
Since
Leaf
Nangonja
and our
directly
appearance."
fell out with
Tobarama
Nangonja in
raised
order
his
to
hand
save
and
her,
looked at it.
her heart was
Then he
almost
seemed to
hanging on
understand
Nangonja.
something and
said,
"However,
we really reap what
Nangonja
we
had
sow."
never valued this kind
Back
of love
then,
so
in order
much,
to increase
so
Wood
she
Leaf's
could only
strength,
quietly
I started
hide these
researching
thoughts in
Edo
her heart
Tensei,
and didn't dare to
but
say
at that
it out
time,
loud.
Big Brother stopped me and
Nangon
sealed
grew
up
up under
under
Nangonja's
information.
care.
Among
Who would
the
have
people
thought that
present,
someone would be
only
able to
Nangon
complete the
Ro knew
technique I left
Nangonja the
behind?
earliest and knew him the
Hearing his
longest.
brother's words,
In the
Senju
past,
Takuma also
Nangon
said to
Ro's
Tobarama,
attachment to Nangonja
"I told you
could
to
be
completely
explained by the
destroy
friendship
these
between
things,
siblings,
but you didn't listen.
However,
Now look at us,
Nangon
we're
Ro's
already
heart was
dead,
clear
but
that
we're still being
Nangonja
dragged
wasn't her
out.
biological
Hashirama
brother
himself
so
had a
all of
lively
this was
temperament.
worth carefully
He was
thinking
obviously
about,
summoned
wasn't it? By the Edo Tensei,
The two girls looked
but he
at
didn't seem to
Nangonja
care
with
about his
slightly
situation
resentful
at all.
eyes at the same
Instead,
time,
he blamed his
but
younger brother.
Nangonja didn't know
Obviously,
anything and thought that he
Tobarama
had
has
offended
long
the
been
two
accustomed
girls.
to his elder
However,
brother,
after
so
all,
he
in front
directly
of his
chose
half
to ignore
disciple,
his brother's blame.
Nangonja couldn't easily
Instead,
lose
he
face,
looked at Yuan
so he
Fei
could only
standing
use his
opposite
eyes
him
to
and
appease
said with
the two
emotion,
girls,
"Are you
Sasuke?
Yuan Fei
A
boy?"
voice suddenly
It's been
sounded,
so many years,
directly
have you
breaking
become a
the
slightly
slightly
awkward
Looking
atmosphere
at
between
Yuan Fei,
everyone.
who was
The
obviously
one who
much
spoke
older
was
than himself
naturally
and his
Yuri
elder brother
Koyuri
from the
Tobarama
Uchiha
also
clan,
felt a lot of
and
emotions
Sasuke
for a
also
while.
looked at the person who called his name. Hearing his brother's
You are
words,
Yuri
Hashirama
Koyuri
was
Sen?
also interested.
Although Yuri
He
Koyuri
happily
and
went to
Sasuke were not
Tobarama's side and
descendants
saw
of the
the
same
old
branch.
Sarutobi.
Yuri Koyuri
Oh,
was also
Yuan
known as
Fei
a
boy,
genius
what's
after
wrong
all.
with you?
Is it because you've
as
been
the
too
patriarch
indulgent
of the
after
Uchiha
getting
clan,
married?
also
You become
praised
so
Yuri
old?
Koyuri at some
Hearing
family banquets and
Hashirama's words,
festivals.
everyone on the roof
Sasuke
was
also
shocked.
had some impression
Even
of
the
her.
gloomy
He forgot to
Orochimaru's
tell Yuri
eyes and mouth
Koyuri not
twitched
to
a
come
little
out
at
and
this
meet
moment.
Sasuke.
Obviously,
Otherwise,
he had a
many
hard
things
time
wouldn't be so
enduring it.
easy to hide.
He quickly
The first
coughed and gave
Hokage,
Yuri Koyuri a
looking
look,
at the familiar
and Yuri
face
Koyuri
engraved on
naturally
the shadow
quickly
rock of
realized his
wood leaf,
gaffe and quickly
combined with
suppressed
the
the
words of
surprise
the three
after meeting
generations.
Sasuke.
Watergate
Are you
naturally
curious why I'm
understood that
still
the
alive?
long-haired man
Yuri
opposite him is the
Koyuri
first
naturally
Hokage
saw
of
the
would
doubt
leave
in Sasuke's eyes.
Senju
So
But why
Yuri
is
Koyuri
Watergate's
decided
so
to directly
unwilling to
speak
admit
first
it?
to block the
Orochimaru,
possibility of Sasuke
don't
getting
you think
to the
that your
bottom of
means
the
are a
matter.
bit too dirty?
These two are your seniors, your grandmasters.
I was performing a mission
You
outside
disturbed
the
their
village
rest
on that
just
day,
for your
so I
own
didn't
selfish
stay in the
desires.
village. causing their souls to be unable to rest in peace. Who just came to the door to pick you up, and she is Nangang Sensei's sister. The 3 generations ignored Watergate's question. For various reasons, instead they began to reprimand their disciples, and just happened to bump into the ninja sent by the mastermind behind the scenes to kill me. So I was safe. Who was standing next to Tobarama, words were not in his mouth, but he was directly interrupted by Sasuke. Cute anymore. Mastermind now he looks like a pedantic old man. Although Sasuke's already the truth of the matter many times in his heart. Although what you said is not someone wrong, controlling his brother and making attention to do this series of things was naturally one of Sasuke's guesses, level, but he never expected to hear such a statement from the mouth of the Uchiha survivor, ignored Hashirama. As for the remaining one, and the other 3 girls looked at Yuri, even if he wants to ignore lines on their faces. His own words, how can this intentional or not? And Orochimaru didn't know that Yuri was such a big these people talking about their daily lives. So much important information from his arms and put them into the heads of the 2 former Hokages. Smooth things over perfectly. Everyone, I didn't bring you here to talk about daily life and see the changes of Woodleaf. Since you're already here, Chapter 319. It's better to listen to my orders. Since it was caused by Yuri Koyuri, it was natural for Yuri Koyuri to solve it himself. Knew that a battle was inevitable, Sasuke directly so they could only adjust Nangang's house. Watergate the 2 of them whispered for a long time, and 3 generations also took off their white robes. Sasuke and Yuri Koyuri went to Nangangja together. Be careful. Nangangja wasn't worried about whether Yuri Koyuri generations at the same time and his wife were still constantly forming because this news was different from the one-sided information revealed by Yuri Koyuri would release. As long as he dared to leak a little bit of information, it would have a great impact on the roof. Yuri Koyuri would never say it so easily. Turned into a sea of trees. As for how Yuri Koyuri fooled Hashirama didn't stop there. Nangangja wasn't that interested. To form hand seals to cast ninjutsu. Nangangja was more concerned about the reason why Sasuke came to his house. The roof that was originally covered with trees suddenly had many thick roots emerging from the ground. These roots quickly attacked Watergate in 3 generations. To let Yuri Koyuri temporarily leave some space for the 2 of them. And the blonde boy next to him, and Sasuke were left in the room. Otherwise, it will cause a large loss of chakra. As long as you can solve a problem by yourself, you will never bother others. At the blind today you came at this time, and which is enough to prove that the current matter has a lot to do with you. That we're coming towards, and you don't have the confidence that you can do it perfectly and leave no regrets. When Sasuke heard Nangangja's words, he didn't feel transformed into a huge stick and waved it vigorously. He felt that this was the right thing to do. That were attacking him after all, whether it was personal strength or life experience, Nangangja was much richer than Sasuke. A young genin. Senju Takuma's on the contrary, if Nangangja didn't see such a thing forward and quickly formed slightly despised Nangangja, forming a ninjutsu in an instant. I think Nangang Sensei should know himself was a grand master of water release. Sasuke didn't answer Nangangja's question directly. He can fully display water release ninjutsu. And now Tobarama was using his most representative ninjutsu water release for no reason. Hard whirlpool, a rebellious Sannin in Sasuke's generation. Tobarama's hand, Nangangja nodded and motioned Sasuke to continue. And as the chakra injected by Tobarama continued to increase, this man named Orochimaru in the palm of Tobarama's hand also became bigger. I believe that with Woodleaf's investigative methods, 3 generations had been using their taijutsu to block Senju Takuma's jutsu. You should have received this news as well. But when the whirlpool in the palm of Tobarama's hand reached the size of a basketball, Orochimaru's discovered what kind of ninjutsu Tobarama was using. They told me that the curse mark on my neck is the most powerful curse mark of heaven. As long as I follow them and join Orochimaru, I will be able to obtain the true power of the curse mark of heaven. Moreover, when Watergate heard the guidance of Orochimaru, he also looked at Kage-level powerhouse, who seemed to be and get the resources to make me stronger quickly. The huge whirlpool in the palm of Tobarama's hand told me naturally, but I know that you must be hiding something, especially the momentum coming from the whirlpool, it's all because of my own lack of ability that you hide things from me. Waving his left hand, a flying thunder god kunai flew towards Senju Tobarama. This is an opportunity for me to take my destiny in my own hands and let the truth of the world appear in front of much better than my stupid brother. I came here this time to ask Nangang Sensei to help me hide the surveillance for Woodleaf under the control of the talisman so that I have a chance to leave Woodleaf and meet Orochimaru. Naturally, there was no way to warn Orochimaru with sincerity, but now that he has been discovered, he put down all the unnecessary pride of others and just put himself in the identity of a junior to communicate with Nangangja. Watergate naturally knew whose ninjutsu his flying thunder god jutsu was. A long time ago, I also worked for Orochimaru. If the quality of the Edo Tensei's sacrifice was too poor, I had already noticed how he himself was forcibly controlled by Orochimaru. After all these years, this man had become more and more have the medium to use the flying thunder. Some of the information I got seems to say that between Tobarama and Watergate an organization was more exciting than it is by your brother. Blonde boy, since you know how to use the flying thunder god clan's unique Sharingan, then you have the opportunity to naturally became Orochimaru's first choice Insert target. The kunai with the space mark directly into the center of the hard whirlpool, but I hope you can be aware of it. And then use the space transfer to directly although you may get more than what you can get in Woodleaf on the other side of the scale of benefits can be broken without attacking. As long as you understand this, I can arrange for you to leave Woodleaf so naturally he directly teleported the hard whirlpool water blade to a place where Tobarama couldn't controlling ninjas. And then he fought with Tobarama with his flying thunder Sasuke not to do such a betrayal
From time
of the
to time,
village.
Tobarama
After all,
used his
with leaf
ninjutsu
in
to attack
Nangong's mind
Watergate,
is not so
and Watergate
sacred
used his
and
Rasengan to counterattack
for
from time
Sasuke's
to time.
character, it is indeed difficult to get
Looking
rapid
at the
growth
three
in wood
generations
leaf.
in Yandeng who
Nangong
seem to be
knows this,
fighting
Sasuke
Senju
knows it
Takuma
even
and
more.
Tobarama,
Only under the
Orochimaru
coercion of
himself with
Orochimaru
Shamaru
can Sasuke
his
get the
Edo
growth he
Tensei
deserves.
is affected by many
Thank you,
factors
Sensei.
such as the condition of the
This time, either I
sacrifice,
return with
whether
glory
the
or
summoned
I die
soul
in a
is
foreign
obedient
land
or not.
I don't care
all
about
of which
these two
affect the
endings.
strength of the
I
person
know
who
how
was
powerless I am.
reincarnated. When
Just
my
like
brother
now,
killed my
Senju
entire
Takuma
clan,
and
I was
Tobarama
powerless to
sacrifice
stop
are
him.
just two
When
ordinary
the ninja
genin,
named Haku
and the two
injured
of them
my
are
teammates,
unwilling to
I
fight
was
against
still
the three
powerless to
generations
stop
of
him.
Wood Leaf,
After that,
and
there
the
were
current
many similar
Hokage
things
Watergate.
that happened.
As a
Even
result,
if there are
the
deep wounds
dignified
all over my
shinobi
body,
no Kami
it's not as
and
painful
Wataru
as this
feeling
feeling
of
of
powerlessness
are almost
So,
tied with his
I
juniors.
decided to leave Wood Leaf.
Originally, considering
I'm
the
sorry,
condition
Sensei,
of his
not
body,
only have to accept my
Orochimaru wasn't
rebellious
so willing to
decision,
personally
but
fight
also
against
help me
the three
complete
generations
such a
in
difficult
Watergate.
request.
But now that the
Sasuke
two
strong
strong
but
people
stood
who
up
were
and bowed deeply
reincarnated
to
from the Edo
Nangongja.
Tensei were forced to fight,
Nangongja stood up and helped
Orochimaru had
Sasuke
no
up,
choice but to
slightly
take action
shook his head
himself.
and said to Sasuke,
Wood Leaf has been
"It's a pity
intercepted
that
by
you and I don't have a
Orochimaru and
master-disciple
Nangongja
relationship.
Tukage-level
I can
ninjas.
only teach you
If
some
he can't get
swordsmanship.
enough results on the
However,
current
I do have
battlefield,
some
this
feelings
plan
for him,
called
and he can
Wood
be
Leaf
considered
collapse
half a
will be
disciple of
completely
mine.
reduced to
People
failure.
often say that the
Ninjutsu,
relationship between a
snake
master and a
annihilation,
disciple is no
his two
different
enemies,
from the
the three
relationship
generations
between a
of
father and a
Hokage,
son.
Yuan Fei,
You're like
and
my
the fourth
nephew.
Hokage,
This kind of
Watergate.
thing
He
is
must
just a
defeat
small
one of
matter
them
for
to
me,
form an
even if
advantage
it's to
for
help
his
you
plan.
get revenge. It's
Watergate
just a small
is now
matter.
young and strong, although now it seems that he is tied with Senju
But I still
Takuma,
hope that you can
but
find
in fact,
all the
whether
answers
it is
by yourself.
Orochimaru
Only
or
then can you
Watergate,
really grow.
they know in their
I
hearts
hope
that
you
it
don't
is
disappoint
impossible
my
to defeat
expectations
Watergate
and
by
can grow
relying
up
on
to be a
Tobarama.
man of indomitable
Then he must
spirit.
use the enemy's weakest point as a
words
breakthrough.
directly put himself
Looking
in
at
the
Yuan
position of
Fei, who was
Sasuke's
panting
elder.
because of trying
And
to
out of
resist
respect for
Senju
Nangongja,
Takuma, Orochimaru
Sasuke finally
finally
carefully
used his
remembered
ninjutsu.
Nangongja's
The
words in
snakes
his
were like
heart.
kunai,
He nodded
flying
slightly
quickly
and
in the
smiled
direction
at
of Yuan
Nangongja.
Fei.
Unlike
Yuan
the
Fei
slightly
himself was
stiff
also
smile in the
trying his
past,
best to block Senju
Sasuke's smile
Takuma's
at this
mantra,
moment was
and now he looks
extraordinarily
very
warm.
tired.
It was
The
like finding
ninjutsu
a pair
that
of warm hands
Orochimaru
to
just
push
used
back,
directly made
so that he
several
can
poisonous
bravely move
snakes rush
forward on
towards
the
Yuan
thorny
Fei.
road.
The yellow snakes looked very similar to the roots summoned by mantra. Yuan Fei didn't pay attention to them
Chapter
and directly
320.
hit the poisonous
Looking at
snakes with the
Sasuke's
stick transformed by
figure,
the ape demon.
Nangongja
Just
slowly
when the
closed
stick
the
was
gate
about
of his
to hit the
courtyard.
poisonous snakes,
Miyagi.
after a strange
Sasuke
twist,
can be regarded
the
as half
poisonous
of your
snakes rushed
disciple.
directly
Are you
towards
willing
Yuan
to push
Fei's
him
body
directly
along
into
the
the
fire pit. The snake's mouth was
Mishiro,
also
who was
wide
standing
open,
next to
and Yuan
Nangongja,
Fei could even
said to
smell the stench
Nangongja
from
with
the
a
little
snake's
worry
mouth.
in his eyes.
He directly
Over
made
the
a
years,
decision,
Nangongja
throwing
has
his stick
seen
in
many
his hand
amazing
towards the
people,
sky,
but the
and
only
the
one who
original
can
golden
inherit a
staff
little of
instantly turned
Nangongja's
into
legacy
Yuan
is the
Fei's
child
shaman
of the
beast,
Uchiha
the
family
ape
who
demon.
just came out of
The ape
Nangongja's
demon's
house.
hand directly grabbed
Mishiro
the
has
poisonous
received a
snakes on
lot
his
of
body,
confidential
and with a
information
little
in the
force,
blood-cloaked
these
pavilion over the
poisonous
years,
snakes were
and
broken.
he has a deep
Yuan
understanding
Fei
of
also quickly
Orochimaru.
made hand seals,
Orochimaru
and a
is a
katan was
ruthless
formed in
beast
an
in
instant.
human form.
Katan,
As long as it is
fire
beneficial to him, he will open his fangs and
Unlike
pounce
other
on the target
ninjutsu,
fiercely.
Mokutan
With
is almost
Sasuke's
impossible
character
to target.
and experience
Only
in the
Katan
hands of
can have a little
Orochimaru,
effect.
it's
So
inevitable
Yuan Fei
that he
also
will be
decisively
eaten by
used his
Orochimaru.
B-class ninjutsu
However,
to block the roots that
Nangongja
attacked him
didn't seem
because
to
he threw
agree
away
with
the stick.
Mishiro's words.
A huge fire
He
dragon
waved his
was
hand
spat
and
out
walked
from
into
his
the
mouth.
house with Mishiro.
Because of the injection
After
of a lot
sitting
of
down
chakra,
casually, he
the
said to
attack
Mishiro,
power and size of
"I
this
taught
B-class
Sasuke for a
ninjutsu
while,
have been
but do you know
significantly
what kind of
improved at this
swordsmanship
moment.
I taught him?
The fire
It is the
dragon
most
wandered
ruthless and
wantonly in a
decisive
forest.
of all the swordsmanship
Because of
I
Senju
learned.
Takuma's
The remnant
actions,
of the
the
fatal
trees
13
formed by
swords.
Mokutan don't have the
Swordsmanship is the
characteristics
reflection
of
of a
fire
person's
resistance.
heart, directly
Sasuke
covering the
will not
entire
become
roof
a
with
loyal
flames.
dog raised by
Looking
Wood
at
Leaf.
Senju Takuma,
He is most suitable to be
Orochimaru's
a goshawk
eyes were
soaring
very
in the
cold,
sky and
and
hunting
his
in the
hands were
sky.
flying.
Wood
Leaf
Leaf
is not the place to teach a
talisman he
goshawk,
implanted
and I
in
am
the
not
heads of
suitable
Senju
to teach a
Takuma and
goshawk.
Senju Takuma.
The various
Completely
grievances
controlling
between
the actions of the two
Orochimaru and
people.
Sasuke and
Even if he
Itachi are
sacrificed
destined
some
to
of his
intertwine
strength,
and
it
collide
was
with
much
each other
better than
unexpectedly.
like now, right?
Let's see how much impact Sasuke, a chess piece, will have on the world's general trend
Chapter
in those high
311.
and mighty people.
Although forcibly
you go and
controlling
inform
the
the
thoughts of the
blood-cloaked
person
pavilions
summoned by the Edo Tensei will lead to a decrease in strength and flexibility. It is always better than being unable to help at all and causing trouble like now. Although he didn't quite understand, he still followed Nangon's instructions without the lively spirit they had just now. Pavilion in Watergate and Yuan Fei also quietly discovered the changes of the two seniors, and the two also gathered together again. Sasuke also directly went to find a way to help the two former Hokages. He had lived in for more than 10 years only some research materials of the Edo Tensei he was going to leave with Leaf directly, Orochimaru probably just perfected this ninjutsu and applied it. He slowly deviated from the route he should take, and actually walked in the direction of his teammate Sakura's house. But it is precisely because of this that it is even more difficult for him when his memory was blurred by the curse of the Hokages. In the wood leaf, from the two of them attending Transformation Jutsu at the same time Jin are related to the existence of souls. Sakura also expressed her love again and again. Jutsu is Kato's secret technique.
Although we have the relevant
Sasuke
information,
himself didn't know
there is
what
no
it was
way
like
to
to
find
love a
someone
person,
who can
but
practice this
Sakura's
secret
care and
technique.
care still left
Now
a
we can
shallow
only use
shadow in
Shiki Fuji's
Sasuke's
lonely heart.
Looking at
When
Watergate,
Sasuke was about to leave there with a firm face,
he didn't know if he could return
Orochimaru
safely
was his
again.
disciple,
Sasuke
but he was
still
also
couldn't
his
suppress the
disciple.
emotions in
At
his
this
heart
moment,
and slowly
he was
blaspheming the
Sakura's
two
house.
former Hokages
Knock,
of
knock.
Konoha,
And it was
Sasuke
also
knocked
his
on the
disciple
wooden
who
door of
pushed Sakura's
Konoha
house
into such a
with his hand,
dangerous situation.
and soon someone answered
All of this
inside.
was his
After
responsibility
the door
for
was
letting
opened,
Orochimaru
a woman
go.
with the same
In this case,
cherry-colored
he
long
should be the
hair,
one to end
but
everything.
obviously older,
Minato
opened the
knew
door.
very well how
Hello,
stubborn this old
this
man
is
named
Haruno's
Sarutobi
house.
was. What can I do
Ninja
for you?
was a profession that
The
was
person
born
who
for
opened
fighting.
the door was
After
naturally
retiring
Sakura's
behind
mother,
the scenes for
Mabi.
3 generations,
Although Mabi occasionally
many big
saw
and
the
small
photos of
problems
Sakura's
Sakura's
gradually appeared in his
team,
body.
she didn't pay
If
much
things
attention
continued
to
to
it
develop
and didn't
according to
recognize
this
Sasuke's
situation,
identity for a
Yuan
while.
Fei can only live for a
Sasuke
few years,
respectfully
and he has
saluted
to
Mabi,
struggle on his
and then
sickbed to
introduced
win
himself
these
to
few
Mabi.
years.
I'm
Although
in the
he is
same team
old,
as
Yuan
Sakura.
Fei's pride has
Uchiha
never
Sasuke
subsided,
from Team
but
7.
it has become more
Today
and
I
more
suddenly
firm.
wanted to come and chat
Now
with
Yuan
Sakura.
Fei's words were
I didn't inform
tantamount
you
to
in
choosing a
advance,
way for
so I
himself
took the
to
liberty
die.
to disturb
The
you.
corpse ghost seal was
Hearing
indeed a
Sasuke's
very
name,
powerful
Mabi
sealing
naturally
technique.
knew that the
No
boy
matter
in
if it
front
was
of
a
her
huge
was the Prince
chakra or a
Charming that her
powerful
daughter
soul,
had been
it
thinking
could be
about.
sealed.
Carefully
However,
looking
the
at
price to
Sasuke,
pay was also
Mabi
very
found that the
expensive,
child looked a
and
little
that was
cold.
his own life.
She didn't know whether it was
Watergate looked at
intentional
Yuan
or
Fei and
unintentional.
felt very uncomfortable
Although
in
he
his
had a
heart.
lot of attraction
But this
for
was
young
Yuan
people
Fei's
like
decision.
Sakura,
As a
Mabi's heart
proud
wasn't
and
so
powerful
comfortable.
ninja, Yuan
After
Fei
all,
would
these
not
children
allow
were
his
only
death to be
11 or
worthless.
12 years old.
At this time,
It should
Yuan
be the
Fei
time
could
for
give
their
up his
nature
life
to
in order
bloom,
to inspire
but they
the
were
wood-leaf
always so
ninjas,
gloomy,
to
which
unite
made
the
people
wood-leaf
feel
ninjas,
uncomfortable,
and to protect the
and
freedom
Sasuke
of his two
himself was from
masters.
the Uchiha
Please.
clan. In the
Watergate.
past,
The
Uchiha
eyes
could
of
be
the
said
three
to be
generations
rampant and
were
a
a
little
little
cloudy.
There
and
were
there
often
were
many
obvious
traces
people
of
who relied
age
on
on
their
his
kinship
face.
with the Uchiha
Yuan
clan
Fei
to
was
make
truly
trouble
old.
in Mabi's clothing
But the
store.
begging of the 3
So Mabi
generations
has always
touched
disliked
Watergate's
those people
mood
who
so
came
much
from
that he
rich
could only
families.
nod bitterly and agree
Since
to
you are my
Yuan Fei's
Sakura's
request.
teammate, there is naturally no disturbance.
Ninjutsu.
It just so happens that
Shadow
Sakura
clone
is also
jutsu.
at home.
Ninjutsu.
Come in and sit for a while.
Shadow
I will
clone
call
jutsu.
Sakura out.
Yuan Fei
Although
and
Mabi still
Watergate's
had a
voices
gentle
sounded
demeanor,
at the same
it was a
time,
kind of
and the
surface
two of them
politeness that
separated
made
into
people
two
feel
shadow
very
clones,
uncomfortable.
rushing
But
towards
Sasuke
Senju
didn't
Takuma,
seem to care at all,
Tobirama, and
so he walked
Orochimaru,
inside the room
sealed
under
jutsu,
Mabi's guidance.
golden seal jutsu,
Not long after,
false.
Sakura finally came out of
Watergate's
her room
voice
in the midst
sounded,
of the
and
chaos.
the 3 Watergate's
Dressed
clones
in
quickly
casual
made
clothes
hand
with some
seals,
cherry blossom
and chains
patterns,
rose from Watergate's
Sakura
body
lost
and
some
his
of the
clones.
heroic spirit of a
The golden
ninja
seal
and gained
jutsu
some of the
itself is a
gentleness and
jutsu
charm of a
unique to
woman.
the Uzumaki clan.
Sasuke.
As
I
it
just
is
heard
not
Mom say that
compatible
you
with the
want to talk to
Uzumaki
me?
clan's chakra.
Watergate
Sakura
can't use
looked
the
at
original
Sasuke,
golden
who
seal
suddenly
jutsu,
came to visit.
but with the help
Her
of
heart was now in a mess, and her
Watergate
face
used
was
his
red.
own chakra to
Naturally,
develop a
she was a
jutsu
little
very
nervous.
similar to the golden
After
seal
Mabi
jutsu.
called Sakura down,
Although it
she
is
didn't
not as
avoid it at
powerful
all.
as the golden seal jutsu inherited by the Uzumaki clan, instead
It is
she
also
looked
a
at her
good way to
daughter's
trap the
embarrassed
enemy.
expression with
Chains
great
with a
interest,
little metallic
which made
luster
Sakura
and
feel
exuding
even
light
more
flew
embarrassed.
from the back of Watergate's
Without thinking
body
about
and
the
clones.
shyness in her
Rushing
heart,
directly
Sakura
towards
rushed
Senju
forward,
Takuma,
grabbed
Tobarama
Sasuke's
brothers,
wrist,
and
pulled
Orochimaru
Sasuke all the way
the
to her
extremely
room.
fast speed
When
made
Sakura
Senju
came back to
Takuma
her
and
senses,
Tobarama
she found that
brothers,
she and
who have
Sasuke
lost
were
their
already
flexibility,
standing in the room where
directly
she had
bound
just
by the
dressed up in a
chains.
hurry. Orochimaru
Sasuke.
could have avoided it,
I,
but Yuan Fei's
Sakura
clones
immediately
in his body,
wanted to explain
a
to
total of 3
Sasuke,
clones,
but she found that
directly
Sasuke
blocked
was looking at her
Orochimaru's
very
room to
seriously,
escape, and the words that
Watergate's
were in her
golden
throat
seal
were
jutsu.
also held back.
False also
I'm
directly
leaving
imprisoned
with leave.
Orochimaru.
What
Old
did you
man.
say?
What are you
Sakura
doing?
seemed to be disturbed by
Orochimaru
Sasuke's
suddenly
words
had
for
an
a while,
ominous
but
premonition
then
in
she
his
looked
heart.
at Sasuke
The
and
originally
said,
gloomy
"Are you going to
atmosphere
travel
has now
outside
been directly
directly dispelled by the
practice.
throbbing of
If
his
you
heart
came to
because
find
of
me
the
to go with
approaching
you,
death?
it's not impossible.
Orochimaru?
No,
In the
I'm
beginning,
leaving the
because of
village,
my
and it's a
mistake,
long
I let you
time.
leave Konoha.
I have asked
Over the
Nangong
years,
Sensei,
I had hoped
and
that
he
you
also
would
agreed
repent,
with my
but
decision.
you have become even
I
worse.
came this time because
Now
I don't know
you
if
have
I
led
can come
Konoha
back
into
safely,
such a
so I came to
situation
see
and
you.
proposed this plan called Konoha's Collapse. As your sensei, I am duty-bound to help you. Whether it is
Chapter
the 2 former
321.
Hokages or you,
Sasuke
let me deal
walked
with
on
them
road in a daze. After that, he didn't remember what he said to clones arrived in front of Senju because in Sasuke's mind, all he could see was Sakura crying like a pear blossom in the rain, and a total of 9 seals with tears in her eyes. Behind the 3 clones of Sasuke's was really soft. The Shinigami's shadow, at that moment, which can only be seen by the caster and the target, Sakura that he wouldn't leave and that he would stay. But the Shinigami still stretched out his pale hand and directly passed. If he didn't have so much pain and hatred, he would definitely stay. The pale hand also directly grabbed his brother was wrong, and his family members were killed in the Edo Tensei. Sasuke felt that he couldn't just care about the love in front of him. The Edo Tensei's body also collapsed. Sasuke hoped that he could get enough power to protect everything he wanted to protect. It was obvious that he was under a lot of pressure. People don't live just for themselves. After removing his 2 clones, he let the chakra in his body recover a little, and once again conveyed his will to the Shinigami behind that Nangong gave him. The Shinigami's hand passed through the abdomen of Yuan Fei's body, were the 4 ground ninjas who set up a barrier around the battlefield of Watergate. Yuan Fei conveyed the command to the Shinigami to directly extract the one who spoke to Sasuke was a guy with light blue-gray hair and even painted his lips blue. Showed a very human-like protest. Using his own soul in exchange for the soul of two dead people and one living person,
Zukin had just reached
the
out his hand
Shinigami
to his
didn't seem to
companions
agree
and
to
wanted
such
to
a
tell
deal.
Sasuke the names
Seeing
of his
that
other three
Orochimaru's soul
companions,
seemed to be
but he was
constantly
interrupted by
struggling in the
Sasuke's
hands of the
cold
Shinigami.
glance.
I was invited
that
by Orochimaru to increase my strength,
so he directly
not to
conveyed
make
his will
friends
to
with
the
a group of
Shinigami.
small fries like
Although
you.
somewhat
Since
reluctant,
you know my
the
identity
Shinigami
and know
took
that
the short knife in his mouth and cut
then put your
Orochimaru's
attitude
soul,
right,
directly
Got
cutting
it?
off the part of
On
Orochimaru's
Sasuke's face,
hands. There was unconcealable coldness and contempt, which made the four sound ninjas,
Chapter
who were a little
312.
arrogant and didn't
Bang.
like Sasuke,
Orochimaru
a little
didn't have any other
uncomfortable.
feelings,
You
but
bastard.
this kind of
Who
pain
do you
was
think
etched
you
in
are?
his heart.
How dare you
When
be
the
so
Shinigami cut off
disrespectful
the
to
soul in
Orochimaru's
Orochimaru's arm,
I'm going
the
to beat
pain
you
directly
up.
made Orochimaru,
Although the four of them
who had
were
become
women
numb
because
Toyo,
of
who
several
was the most
reincarnations,
irritable,
also
extremely
lost her temper
sensitive,
directly
and the
at
pain
Sasuke.
directly attacked
But Jigiba walked
Orochimaru's
to
mind.
Toyo's side, stretched out his thick hand and grabbed Toyo's
Orochimaru
arm,
shouted
indicating
loudly
that
at the
Toyo
sky,
shouldn't be
but
so
soon
rude.
stopped abruptly.
But Toyo didn't
Apparently,
appreciate
he had
it
been
at all.
directly stimulated
Instead,
by the
she
intense
looked at
pain
Jigiba,
and
who
lost
grabbed her arm
consciousness.
with some disgust
Watergate
and said
walked
loudly,
towards Orochimaru,
"You fat man,
holding
how
a
dare you
kunai in
touch
his
this
hand.
old lady?"
Watergate
Believe
has
it
a
or
deep
not,
fear
I
of
will cut off your
Orochimaru
fat hand.
because Watergate's master
Zilling
Jiraiya
Fang was
has
very
a very
disgusted
close
with
relationship
people who
with
insulted
Orochimaru,
others with dirty
so
words.
Watergate thinks that
When
he
he
knows
became the one who was
Orochimaru better.
insulted, he
This
became
person
even
is simply a
angrier.
madman.
He
as
was
long
ready
as
to
it is
argue
something
or
he
fight
believes
with
in,
Toyo,
all the
but at
rules of
this
the
time,
world are
a
useless
powerful
in front of him.
momentum rose from
Such a
Sasuke's
person is a
body.
bit too dangerous.
The heavenly curse
Watergate
seal, which
felt
was
that he
originally
can't let
sealed by
Orochimaru
Kakashi,
would leave
was
like
also
this.
in a state of
But
activation.
just when Watergate was about to
Sasuke's
reach
face was also
Orochimaru,
covered
the
with
three
this
generations
who were still holding Orochimaru's shoulder, which was covered by the black
reached out their
pattern,
hands to
also
stop
became
Watergate.
a little gray color.
Three
Which was
generations
very
was dying,
scary, so their voice was very weak and trembling, but they still mustered up the strength to say to
ninjas
Watergate,
stared at Sasuke
Watergate,
tightly,
and
they
now
were
I'm
very
not talking
surprised.
to you as the Hokage
These
of
four
three
people all have
generations, your
curses on
master,
their bodies,
but as an
but
old
even
man
if they
named
have
Yuan
awakened
Fei,
to the second
I
state
have
of
three
curses,
disciples in
they
my
don't
life.
have the powerful momentum
Orochimaru
of the
is
first
smart,
state of
Jiraiya
heavenly
is sincere,
curse
and
the
Tsunade
semi-activated
is
state on
I
Sasuke's
thought that my
body.
disciples
I
would be
said,
the mainstay
didn't
of
you hear
Konoha's
what I
future,
said?
but it
You are
seems
just
that
here
fate
to
has
perform
made a
your
fool of
task
us
and bring me to
Orochimaru's
Orochimaru's location.
Tsunade, and
If you
Jiraiya
can't
left
do it,
Konoha
I don't
one
mind
after
cleaning
another,
you up one
leaving
by one,
only me
and
an
then go
old
to
man to support
Orochimaru.
Konoha with you over the
Sasuke
years.
changed his
Now
previous
that I'm about to
arrogance
leave
and
this world,
unapproachable.
the burden
Instead,
that was
he
originally
became
on me is also
extraordinarily
removed
arrogant.
from my body
Obviously,
little by little.
it was a subjective
Just now,
change
I have
to
sealed
make
the
himself
soul of
grow smoothly
Orochimaru's
in
arm with
Orochimaru's
Shiki
camp.
Fujinjutsu.
Although the four
From now
sound
on, he
ninjas
can no
weren't
longer
good
use
people,
ninjutsu.
they were very clear
Although
about
Orochimaru has
Orochimaru's
done a lot of
importance to
unforgivable
Sasuke.
things, they also
I
knew
believe
that
that
this is a
Sasuke may
punishment
become
worse
their
than
new
death
leader
for him.
after a certain
This
degree of
child,
training.
like my other two
So they
disciples,
patiently
grew
explained
up
to
under my
Sasuke
watch.
how to activate
It's
the
not an
second stage of
exaggeration
heavenly
to say
curse
that they are
seal
my
and some
children,
subsequent
so I'm
arrangements.
here to discuss
Although
with you as a
Sasuke
master
was
and a
slightly
father.
surprised that
Since
activating the second
Orochimaru
state
has
of
already
heavenly
accepted
curse
his
seal
punishment,
required people to
I don't
fake
know
their
if
death.
Hokage-sama
He
can
still
spare
agreed
the
to this
life of this
arrangement.
unfilial
He took the
disciple
pill
who
and
betrayed
laid down in the
Woodleaf.
wooden barrel brought
Three
by the four
generations
sound
said,
ninjas.
his slightly
Sakura,
closed
who
eyes
was
were
in the
now
Woodleaf,
filled with tears.
also found
It
her
could be
other
said that the
teammate,
third
Uzumaki
generation treated his
Naruto,
three
after a
disciples the
painful
same way he
struggle.
treated his own
She
children.
informed Naruto that
Sandame-sama
Sasuke
was
wanted
also
to leave the
very
Woodleaf.
angry with Orochimaru's
Watergate was also
behavior
at
and
home.
wanted to teach him
He
a good
heard that
lesson.
the matter
But
involved
at the
the
moment of
descendants
his death,
of the Uchiha
the
clan, and
rationality in his heart
Orochimaru,
was
one of
quietly
the
suppressed
Sannin,
by his
and
emotions.
also took it seriously.
After repeatedly telling Naruto not to act without authorization, he immediately changed his clothes and summoned some ninjas to the Hokage office to select personnel to rescue and intercept the Sound Ninja. In Sakura's face, Naruto decisively violated the orders of his father, Watergate, and went directly to the houses of several friends who had a good relationship with him. He called them out and started the drama of the 12 roaches of the wood leaf, incomplete version, united with the 3 Sand siblings, changed clothes, vs the 4 Sound Ninjas, plus Kimimaro. There's no need to talk about the various stories one by one. We only need to know that most of the people in the wood leaf who were called by Naruto to recall Sasuke were seriously injured, and Naruto also returned to the wood leaf the next morning. Woodleaf also seemed to be preparing to add Sasuke to the list of traitors, but Naruto desperately let his father temporarily let Sasuke go, and didn't add Sasuke's name to the list of Umbu's crusade forces. After the dust settled, Nangongja also quietly came to the Hokage office. Standing in the Hokage office, Watergate was sitting in his seat and looking at Nangongja with a smile. Before Sasuke left the Woodleaf, the last place he visited was your house. It seems that you should be very familiar with all this. So why didn't you stop this little Uchiha guy from leaving the Woodleaf? Facing Watergate's question, Nangongja didn't feel ashamed at all. Instead, he said to Watergate, "Since Woodleaf betrayed me, I decided not to work for a village like Woodleaf anymore. Between
you and me, it's just some transactional cooperation, but Sasuke is my half-disciple. He wants to grow and become stronger. What reason do I have to stop him? Chapter 322. Nangongja didn't care about Woodleaf at all, and Watergate also understood that Woodleaf did wrong to Nangongja, so for a while, he didn't know what reason to find to refute Nangongja's words. He could only change the topic and continue to talk to Nangongja about Sasuke. Well, after all, Sasuke's matter has already happened. Woodleaf has also done what they should do, and it can be regarded as the most benevolent. In fact, the only remaining descendant of Uchiha in Woodleaf is also a big problem to some extent. I don't need to say some of the reasons, you should also understand. Although the Uchiha clan is not dominant, once Uchiha Sasuke knows something he shouldn't know, it will be very bad. After all, Sasuke and his brother are still very different. Watergate's words were a bit cruel, but it was also from the perspective of Woodleaf Hokage. There was nothing to condemn, it's just that their positions were different. The brothers of the Uchiha family, who knows how many twists and turns after this to usher in the final stability. Although Nangongja and Sasuke have a lot of fate, it's just that. It's not enough for Nangongja to pour out his heart to Sasuke, so Nangongja didn't care much about how Watergate dealt with Sasuke. Instead, he said to Watergate, "You called me over so secretly, I don't think it's just to tell me how to deal with a child like Sasuke who has a special identity, right? Let's talk business directly, how about it, do you need my help?" Hearing Nangongja's words, Watergate smiled and then said to Nangongja, "Indeed, the time has come, we do need to prepare to start the operation. As for your power over me, I don't need it for the time being. After all, Danzo is one of Woodleaf's people. No matter if he is good or evil, he should be punished by Woodleaf. I'm sure Nangongja isn't the kind of person who would stick to killing his enemies, right? So, when the time comes, you just need to follow us. When Danzo's side has a high-level combatant that restricts our movements, there's no need to rush to make a move." When Nangongja heard Watergate's words, he understood that Woodleaf treated Danzo's matters as his own and did not want others to interfere. To Nangongja, as long as Danzo was no longer a threat to his family and friends, it did not matter if he died or was imprisoned for life. Nangongja cupped his hands slightly towards Watergate, then said, "That's good, as long as the situation calls for it, I'll naturally be on call. I'm also very interested in what will happen to Danzo in the end. Just let me know when the time comes. If there's nothing important, then I'll leave first." "Wait." Seeing that Nangongja was about to leave, Watergate raised his hand to stop Nangongja from leaving. With a little embarrassment on his face, he said to Nangongja, "I do have something to trouble you with, just say it." Watergate stretched out his finger and scratched his eyebrows slightly, a little embarrassed. But after a few times he continued, "You know, Naruto gathered a group of his companions before to stop Sasuke from betraying Woodleaf. But the result was not so good. Many of Naruto's friends were seriously injured, and Naruto himself blamed himself for not being able to bring Sasuke back. During this time, the child's mood has become very depressed, and he is not like his original self at all. Shinakushina and I have been persuading him for a long time, but the effect is not so good. After thinking about it, the only person in Woodleaf who can persuade Naruto well and make him listen to his words is probably you. So, I hope you can come with me to my house and persuade Naruto. After all, he is my child. Seeing him so depressed every day makes my heart uncomfortable." In the end, even Nangongja could see the deep worry in Watergate's eyes. Although Naruto has always had some resistance to Minato, it's still a pity for him. But for his child, Watergate completely gave his everything to Naruto. Just like now, Watergate and Nangongja actually had a pure interest relationship, but for his child, Watergate could still put down his face and ask Nangongja for such a request. "Naruto." Nangongja whispered Naruto's name softly. In fact, Nangongja didn't want to have anything to do with Woodleaf anymore. The reason why he tried so hard to get rid of Danzo's threat was because the few girls who followed him liked the environment of Woodleaf very much. Moreover, he did have some grievances with Danzo that needed to be resolved. But since Minato had put it this way, it would be unreasonable for Nangongja to reject him. Therefore, after a brief silence, Nangongja nodded and said to Minato, "Let's go." Since Naruto is a little confused for the time being, I've watched him grow up and was called uncle by him. Naturally, I should go and persuade him. I don't know if you are going to go with me or... Nangongja said, glancing at the backlog of documents on Watergate's desk. Many of the documents had a big red stamp on the cover. Obviously they were very urgent. Watergate also understood Nangongja's meaning. He smiled and said, "It can't be helped. There are indeed a lot of things during this time. I won't go with you. Shinakushina is at home. During this time, because Team 7 is missing a member, she has been in a state of rest. You can go directly to my house to see Naruto." Speaking of Team 7's temporary rest, Nangongja naturally thought of Kakashi, who came to his house to eat and drink when he had nothing to do. During this time, Kakashi really seemed to have nothing to do at all. When it was time to eat, he would go to Nangongja's house with his group of psychic beasts called ninja dogs. They were actually pet dogs. They came to Nangongja's house to eat. In that case, I won't disturb you from dealing with official business. I will do my best for Naruto, but these are all knots in his heart. In the end, it still depends on whether Naruto can figure it out by himself. I believe that Naruto will be able to break free from this emotion. After all, he is the child of you and Shinakushina. Like parents, like child. Naruto will never be unable to recover from this setback. He will not stop here. Chapter 323. No matter how outstanding a person is, once something involves their wife and children, they will lose their usual indifference and wisdom. Just like Watergate in the Hokage's office, how many people's lives are affected by a stroke of his pen? On the battlefield, he is invincible, rarely meeting an opponent, and is feared by many people. But when Naruto's situation has a problem, even Nangongja, who is not so close to him, can lower his status to ask for help. It is really emotional. After Nangongja left Watergate's office, he went straight to Watergate's house. The one who opened the door for Nangongja was naturally Watergate's wife, Shinakushina. Seeing Nangongja, Shinakushina immediately understood the purpose of Nangongja's visit. With a somewhat sad face, Shinakushina took Nangongja to Naruto's room on the second floor, and gently opened the door. Although the sky is a bit dark, Nangongja can still see Naruto sitting on the ground holding his knees at the moment, and in front of Naruto there is a group photo of Team 7. Naruto's eyes are a bit dull, obviously his mental state is not so good. Even with the strong physique brought by the Nine Tails chakra, Naruto still looks very tired, obviously he hasn't had a good rest for a long time. No wonder Shinakushina and Watergate are so worried and even called Nangongja. Nangongja gave Shinakushina a look, indicating for Shinakushina to leave for a while, then he opened the door and walked into Naruto's room. Nangongja deliberately pushed the door and walked, making an extremely easy to detect sound, but Naruto still didn't respond. Seeing that Naruto didn't respond at all, and didn't even say a word, Nangongja opened his mouth to talk to Naruto first. But Naruto beat him to it. "Uncle Nangong, did you let Sasuke go?" Naruto's voice was a little trembling and hoarse, obviously because of his emotional fluctuations, and he hasn't drunk water for a while. Nangongja could imagine Naruto's feeling of being betrayed by someone close to him when Sasuke said that he supported Naruto's decision to leave the Wood Leaf. When Naruto was very young, Nangongja accompanied Naruto. In that childhood without fatherly love, Nangongja undoubtedly occupied part of Naruto's father role to a certain extent. So, Sasuke's departure, his concealment and acquiescence actually caused the most damage to Naruto. I won't make a decision for anyone whether it's you or Sasuke. I just analyzed Sasuke's situation when he left the Wood Leaf and stayed in the Wood Leaf. And I believe that even without my opinion, Sasuke would still leave. After all, Sasuke has always been like this, extremely opinionated especially when it comes to his own growth. So, I just respected Sasuke's decision. Nangongja was very casual about his own opinion and his role in Sasuke's departure from the Wood Leaf matter, but Naruto was caught in his own strange circle and said to Nangongja, "Even so, uncle, you still played a role in promoting him, didn't you? The three of us have experienced so much together, and we grew so smoothly and significantly when we were in the same team. Why did Sasuke have to leave the Wood Leaf? He even didn't hesitate to throw himself into the hands of that madman Orochimaru. Things like strength, as long as you diligently practice, you can always improve, right? I also learned a ninjutsu called Rasengan from my father during this period of time, just to catch up with Sasuke's pace. Isn't this the way to endure? Compete with each other, promote each other, and then grow together." In the end, Naruto's voice was almost a roar, but it was deliberately covered up and became more low. But such a low roar had a deafening feeling, and it made people feel like their heart was being oppressed. Looking carefully at Naruto's eyes, Nangongja quickly found that there was some orange color in them. Shinakushina, who was waiting downstairs for Nangongja, also quickly felt the Nine Tails chakra, and the chakra on her body was also ready. Once Naruto showed signs of going berserk, she would immediately use the Uzumaki's ninjutsu to seal her child's movements. But Shinakushina's eyes were full of worry and sadness when she looked at me. If it wasn't for the fact that she had no other choice, Shinakushina wouldn't be willing to treat her child like this. But Shinakushina was clear about Nine Tails' ability. If there really was an accident, she must control her child. Naruto. Although Naruto's state was not very good, Nangonja still calmly continued to speak to Naruto. You are not the god of this world, you can't arrange the trajectory of other people's lives. Sasuke has the obligation to be responsible for his own life, you don't need to worry about him. No matter how good your relationship with him is, no matter how much you understand each other, you are not him in the end. You won't understand his pain and he won't understand your experience. What you can do is to live your own life and leave the right for others to choose. Nangonja said and slowly pressed his hand on Naruto's shoulder, and a strand of internal energy began to pour into Naruto's body. To a certain extent, internal energy has a certain restraining effect on chakra. When Nangonja slowly injected his internal energy into Naruto's body, the surging chakra in Naruto's body also slowly calmed down. Although Shinakushina downstairs was also a little confused, it was obvious that Nine Tails' chakra's aura had indeed disappeared, so she also calmed down the chakra in her body and waited for Nangonja's result. Naruto fell into a special state at this moment. At this moment in Naruto's vision and perception, his room was no longer there, and Nangonja, who was pressing on his shoulder, was no longer there. At this moment he seemed to be standing at the place where he and Sasuke fought before, the Valley of the Final with some colors of destiny. Sasuke had turned into the humanoid state of Curse Seal too, and his body was also wrapped in Nine Tails chakra to form a pair of Nikkang. He and Sasuke looked at each other across the waterfall. Chapter 324. Looking at Sasuke standing opposite him, Naruto didn't know what to say for a while. And in a trance, Sasuke, who was originally looking at him across the waterfall, suddenly appeared in front of him. The distance between the two was not even more than 1 meter. Naruto. Seeing that Naruto didn't speak, Sasuke called out Naruto's name first. And Naruto was also stunned because Naruto knew that everything in front of him now was not real. But the Sasuke in front of him looked so real that he couldn't figure it out. You. Naruto looked at Sasuke but still decided to say something in his heart, regardless of whether the Sasuke in front of him was real or fake. Sasuke, I'm a very stupid guy, I don't know if you are real or fake in front of me now. In fact, I didn't like you very much because compared to me you were so dazzling. Everyone was overshadowed by your brilliance, excellent grades, handsome appearance, and learned a particularly powerful swordsmanship from Uncle Nangong. Whether it was the teacher or the students, they were so envious of you and they were so jealous of you. They all have the same name for you, genius. When a person without talent sees an outstanding person, that kind of mentality of jealousy will inevitably emerge. At first, I couldn't see the emotions in my heart, but now I do understand that the name of those emotions is jealousy. But you were envied by so many people and you were envied by so many people. But I didn't find a trace of happiness in you at all. Every day you had a cold face and you didn't seem to be so interested in everything. But sometimes, you would fall into an inexplicable state of contemplation. At that time your eyes would be filled with pain. You would be like a severely injured beast, rejecting everyone who came close to you and unwilling to get close to anyone else. That was a kind of, how to say it, deep loneliness. Later we were assigned to a team. In Team 7 we were almost together day and night. Slowly I found that you were not so annoying. You were also a person who was willing to be injured in order to protect your teammates. When you saw a strong opponent you would be excited to tremble. In the battles and days of getting along with each other, I slowly regarded you as my partner, my best friend. But you still left. Even if I said that I would break your hands and feet to bring you back, even if I used the combination of Nine Tails chakra and Rasengan that I couldn't fully control, I still couldn't bring you back to Woodleaf. Uncle Nangong said that all of this was your choice, I was not qualified to make their decisions for anyone. I know that Uncle Nangong was right, but I was still very unwilling. My closest friend, my closest companion suddenly left me without giving me any reason to convince me, I really can't accept it. When the words came out of his mouth, Naruto also felt that his state had changed. His body, which was originally wearing pajamas, had now changed into his usual battle clothes. Violent and endless Nine Tails chakra burst out from his body, and a Rasengan filled with Nine Tails chakra and Wind Attribute chakra appeared on his right hand. Just like the scene when he fought with Sasuke in the final valley. And Sasuke, who just stood opposite him and just said a sentence, was now staring at Naruto with his eyes. His originally pitch-black eyes have turned into the strongest state of the Three Tomo Sharingan. The Three Tomo Sharingan. You ask me the reason? Sasuke looked at Naruto. His voice was a little gloomy and hoarse. He seemed to be trying to restrain his emotions. My reason is very simple, because Woodleaf is no longer suitable for me. Although there is a comfortable life and companions like you in Woodleaf, these are not what I pursue. In the beginning, I always hoped that I could become strong enough to find out the truth of everything, enough to recover the things I lost. But gradually, I did find out that these are the reasons I found for myself. I'm not a person who is particularly obsessed with these things. In my heart, I'm so simple and eager for power. I'm eager to have something in my hands, no longer a marionette in the hands of others, no longer a chess piece in the hands of others that can be discarded at any time. This kind of mood made me willing to abandon my companions, and made me willing to run to Orochimaru's hands to take risks. Because I'm fed up with my own powerlessness. I'm fed up with someone always standing on top of my head and controlling me. I want to change. I want to become that hand. Sasuke said, and the look of suppression disappeared. Originally scarlet Sharingan, at this moment, the white part of the eye was covered with blood. That look was enough to see the madness in Sasuke's heart. And Naruto seemed to be frightened by the appearance of Sasuke in front of him. The distorted face and the deformed body because of the second state of the curse seal made Sasuke look like a devil who climbed out of hell and wanted to overthrow everything and rebuild everything. Gradually, Naruto only felt that his eyes were blurred for a while, and everything in Naruto's eyes began to become illusory, until finally his consciousness fell into a deep pool, and a strong fatigue attacked his brain. On the first floor of Watergate's house, Shinakushina and Nangongja sat on the sofa. A cup of hot tea and a few dishes of snacks were placed in front of Nangongja and Shinakushina. Obviously, Shinakushina took them out to entertain Nangongja. Naruto, is he okay? Shinakushina asked Nangongja with some apprehension. Obviously, she had endured for a long time before asking this question to Naruto. Don't worry. Nangongja smiled, which also made Shinakushina's mood slightly relaxed. The reason why Naruto is in such a bad state this time is indeed because of Sasuke's sudden departure from the village. On the other hand, it's also because before this, he used the Nine Tails chakra, which was beyond his control, on me. Although the chakra that was mobilized by Naruto has returned to the Nine Tails body, there are still some remnants that affect Naruto's mood. I suppressed the residual chakra in Naruto's body with my own internal strength, and used a little hypnosis technique to push Naruto into a deep sleep. According to my inference, Naruto will wake up tomorrow morning, and there won't be any impact. You can rest assured. Chapter 325. In the forest outside Woodleaf, it was still so quiet. But today's silence was a bit too much. There wasn't even the sound of birds or insects. It was like the autumn wind had swept through this huge forest at this moment, returning everything to its most primitive state. But in the dark corner of the forest, it was very lively at this moment. A shadow passed by, and Watergate and Nangongja stood a little farther away from this noisy place. After the incident of the Uchiha clan, 3 generations, he ordered the elimination of Root and the removal of Danzo from the position of Hokage's assistant. However, it was only a nominal disbandment. Root would use extremely cruel brainwashing methods on their own people, so their cohesion had reached an inhuman level. Today we have found most of Root's bases in Woodleaf, but there must be some Root members left in the outside world. It's really pitiful for these people who were persecuted by Root. It wasn't until today that I have enough strength to eliminate Root. Watergate looked at the large forest in front of him with some pity. Under this forest is the largest base of Root in Woodleaf. Since he has decided to eliminate Root, Watergate is naturally prepared. No matter the size of Woodleaf's base, as long as it is Root's base, ninjas loyal to Watergate are gathering. As long as the appointed time is reached, these people will directly enter Root's base. The number of Jonin participating in this operation is very large. The 3 clan heads of Inoshikacho are all present. Hatake Kakashi and Mike Guy are also participating in this operation. Kurenai, Yuan Fei, Asuma, and other Jonin loyal to Watergate, as well as the Umbu under Watergate's direct command, are already outside the other bases at this moment, waiting for the opportunity to attack. Root will not be able to escape. Looking at Watergate's compassionate look, Nangongja didn't think that Watergate is so noble. From Watergate's words, it is enough to prove that Root's actions are actually clear to Woodleaf's higher-ups. But over the years, Root has never been eliminated and even became stronger. The reason is that although Root's actions are very ruthless, they still bring enough benefits to Woodleaf. Many things that are not suitable for Woodleaf to do are solved by Root. Some people who need to be killed but don't know who killed them, some experiments involving human relations. A lot of such shady tasks are carried out by Root. Therefore, Woodleaf's higher-ups are reluctant to directly eliminate Root. Even if the Hokage gave the order, the people under him didn't do anything, so that Root was almost unaffected, and even buried deeper in the ground. This time, if it wasn't for Watergate and Nara Shikaku's eloquence to persuade most of Woodleaf's higher-ups, this operation is very likely to be unfinished. For the group of people in charge of Woodleaf, you can use the power in your hands to seize benefits for yourself, accumulate wealth, and even do more things that are unacceptable to ordinary people. But the premise of all this is to ensure the interests of Woodleaf. The damage caused by Orochimaru's invasion is obvious to all. Although the Sand took the initiative to surrender and recovered some losses for Woodleaf, the Land of Wind itself is a remote place. How much can they compensate? More importantly, Woodleaf was invaded at such a time, which made Woodleaf's strength decline in the eyes of many clients. This could be seen from the obvious drop in the commission rate during this period of time. These things naturally have to push out a person to take the blame. Orochimaru alone is not enough, so Danzo was logically abandoned. Boom. Hundreds of meters in front of Watergate and Nangongji, a huge explosion sounded. The sky was filled with huge gray and orange flames. This is the phenomenon when the barrier is forcibly broken, and it is also the attack signal agreed by many ninjas attacking Root. Kill. 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 In all the hidden places of Woodleaf at this moment, there were shouts of killing. At this moment, it was already late at night. Who knows how many people who were sleeping were suddenly awakened by the sudden appearance of a huge explosion and the shouts of killing around Woodleaf. In front of Nangongja, Woodleaf ninjas and Root ninjas were fighting fiercely. Root's level of brainwashing and teaching is really good. But even so, a Root ninja can block 2 Woodleaf ninjas, but can he block the pincer attack of 3 Woodleaf ninjas? Root, after all, is a secret organization, and after the 3 generations issued the order to ban Root, Root also lost its righteous name. Although there are some new members joining over the years, they still can't keep up with the high death rate and disability rate of Root. Root is indeed in a state of lack of manpower and its strength is weak. Watergate can be said to have chosen a good time to attack Root. Nangongja looked at the battlefield in front of him, and for a moment he remembered his state of mind during the Shinobi World War. The blood that had cooled down a little because of taking charge of Bloodcloth Pavilion and hibernating in Woodleaf Village was now ignited again. How many years has it been since Nangongja had a good fight? Even during the previous Woodleaf collapse plan, Nangongja gave most of the fighting to others. Even the battle with Ichibi Shikaku was mostly led by Li Yang. The reason was that Nangongja felt that there was no need for him to fight, but at this moment, Nangongja was fighting against his enemy, Root. In the end, Nangongja is actually a guy who holds grudges, and all kinds of bad relationships with Root made Nangongja unable to bear it anymore. With one hand on the hilt of his sword, Nangongja jumped and joined the battlefield. Most of the ninjas who are loyal to Watergate on the battlefield are veteran jonin, so they are naturally interested in Nangongja the Yama, who shone in the Shinobi World War. Over the years, Nangongja hasn't fought in public, and everyone is very curious about Nangongja's strength, so they all paid attention to Nangongja's fight. Even Watergate is watching Nangongja closely, hoping to see how strong Nangongja is. After all, Nangongja doesn't practice chakra, and his main attack method is his own exquisite swordsmanship. Only by seeing it with one's own eyes can you see some of the mysteries. Chapter 326. When Nangongja jumped into the battlefield, there wasn't any sword energy as usual. Instead, it was very calm, like a drop of water in a lake. Even the ripples were difficult to detect. Nangongja was no longer as arrogant and domineering as before. He simply held his heavenly calamity sword and walked through the battlefield as if he was taking a stroll. But even so, no one could overlook Nangongja's slightly skinny figure. Because this person was the person who had been given the title of Yama back then. Such a title was naturally accumulated through the accumulation of human lives. Such a person can't be ignored at will even if he doesn't show his strength. Finally, Nangongja slowly walked to the center of the battlefield. Looking around, Root Shinobi and Konoha Shinobi were fighting each other everywhere. But as Nangongja gradually walked to the center of the battlefield, Root ninjas and Woodleaf ninjas spontaneously began to slowly withdraw from the battle at this moment. Woodleaf ninjas gradually stood behind Nangongja, and Root ninjas naturally stood opposite Nangongja. You all come together.
Nangongja didn't feel any tension because he was facing countless root ninjas. He just said to the many ninjas on the opposite side. Root ninjas are naturally not emotional people, but wood leaf ninjas heard Nangongja's words and naturally respected Nangongja's decision. They all took half a step back and clenched their weapons, ready to support at any time. Looking at their companions, the root ninjas also made up their minds. Facing a single target like Nangongja, it's not advisable to just use ninjutsu to attack because it can be easily dodged and it will consume a lot of chakra. The loss is not worth it. Most of the root ninjas facing Nangongja casually pulled out their weapons and rushed towards Nangongja. Of course, some root ninjas quietly hid their bodies, ready to kill Nangongja at any time when Nangongja didn't have time to react. Most ninjas are good at surprise attacks, and speed is naturally an important factor in a surprise attack. Every root ninja that was rushing towards Nangongja was trying their best to increase their speed, leaving afterimages in the air due to their high-speed movement. Nangongja's sword-like eyebrows slightly raised, the tribulation sword in his hand was also pulled out of the scabbard by Nangongja. The sound of the blade and scabbard rubbing against each other was very clear, like a dragon's roar, echoing on the battlefield. Ha! With a soft shout, Nangongja swung his sword towards the root ninja rushing towards him. The speed of the blade was faster than the speed of the root ninja, and in the blink of an eye, Nangongja's tribulation sword was already on the body of the root ninja in front of him. A huge wound extended from the left shoulder to the right waist of the root ninja, blood staining the root ninja's clothes red, as if he was wearing a kasaya. Nangongja's move was the most basic kasaya chop. When Nangongja first started practicing swordsmanship, he focused on the subtlety and flexibility of swordsmanship. Every day, Nangongja tried his best to make his swordsmanship more complex and unpredictable, so he practiced hard day after day, constantly learning various swordsmanship to increase the number of swordsmanship he knew. At that time, the Shinobi World War also provided Nangongja with a lot of opportunities to practice swordsmanship, and it was also because of these many killings that Nangongja made a name for himself as Yama. But after the war ended, Nangongja gradually lost the opportunity to fight, and his restless heart naturally calmed down. Nangongja finally had the opportunity to fully examine his shortcomings, and found that his strength had reached a bottleneck. It was impossible to get out of this predicament just by relying on the accumulation of swordsmanship, so Nangongja began to slowly discover the existence of swordsmanship. And then, after a long day of thinking, he finally came to a conclusion, and that is potential. There is a time when a person's strength is limited, and heaven and earth do not exist. No matter how strong a person is, he will be limited by his own body's aptitude and be limited to a limited range. But heaven and earth are boundless, the size of the sky is unknown, and the thickness of the earth is unknown. The power called potential that Nangongja thought of was to connect his body with heaven and earth, and borrow the power of heaven and earth. In other words, using the power of heaven and earth called natural energy, the power of heaven's disaster sword that can connect with natural energy is the key to Nangongja's potential. It is precisely because of this that Nangongja can use swordsmanship so exquisitely. Over the years, Nangongja gradually used this weapon called potential more and more ingeniously, and now it has reached the point where the sword domain is 5 meters around him. As long as it is within 5 meters of Nangongja's body, almost every place is under the control of Nangongja. As long as Nangongja wants, his sword can appear anywhere. Gently waving his heaven's disaster sword, scarlet blood turned into a line of blood that floated on the ground. Putting his sword back into the scabbard, he walked step by step towards the direction of the root ninjas. The root ninjas also know that in a one-on-one battle, they have no way to kill Nangongja, so they all join together and rush towards Nangongja. Every time a ninja enters within 5 meters of Nangongja, a sharp sword light will appear beside him, and a line of blood will appear on his neck, and he will lose his life. And all of this, in the eyes of the people next to him, is just Nangongja gently flicking his fingers with the hand holding the sword. Seizing an elite that Root has painstakingly cultivated is just such a simple thing. Naturally, Konoha's ninjas behind Nangong-zetsu also saw it clearly, and they all shouted one after another. Nangong-sama is mighty. Yama-sama really deserves his reputation. Standing behind the wood leaf ninjas, Watergate also noticed the cheers in front of him, and after asking about the situation, his eyes also lit up. Nangongja, this kind of power must be in my hands. As long as I can have Nangongja to cooperate with me, then wood leaf will definitely prosper in my hands. Chapter 327. Every root ninja who rushed towards Nangongja fell to the ground in an instant, blood spurting out from their severed necks. Gradually, even the soil couldn't completely absorb the blood. The blood gradually gathered into a shallow puddle, and around the puddle, there was still a lot of blood flowing into the puddle. From this, it can be seen how many root ninjas have already lost their lives in the hands of Nangongja. The people of Root have never been afraid of death, but this kind of worthless death really made the ninjas of Root feel very cold. After all, their companions rushed forward one after another and lost their lives one by one, and in exchange, Nangongja just flicked his finger. The price and the reward were simply not proportional. Such a situation really made many Root ninjas feel cold. Minato Watergate. 4th Hokage. How dare you bully me? How dare you bully my Root? A slightly old voice suddenly resounded in the battlefield. Nangongja heard this familiar voice, and his eyes finally flashed. The Root ninjas who rushed within 5 meters of Nangongja didn't seem to be affected by Nangongja's invisible slash. Just as they were about to attack, they found that Nangongja was looking at their eyes. Strange, isn't it? Obviously, Nangongja only has a pair of eyes, but every Root ninja felt that Nangongja's gaze penetrated their eyes. Nangongja's eyes were so cold that every Root ninja who had sealed their emotions to a certain extent felt a chill in their hearts. Nangongja was obviously full of flaws, and the terrifying sword domain just now no longer existed, but no Root ninja dared to step forward and attack Nangongja. Hishimura-sama. That's not right. How did I bully you? How did I bully your Root? What is the reason for all this, and what is the reason for the situation to reach this point? You and I are both well aware of it. Why do you have to say such childish words? Watergate, who was standing in the distance, suddenly appeared beside Nangongja. Watergate had a slight smile on his face, and he looked at Danzo standing opposite him with a bit of mockery in his eyes. Shimura Danzo and the 3 generations were of the same generation, and the 3 generations were already old and had white hair. Danzo himself now looked a little old, although his body still looked relatively strong. His white hair looked a little old. Looking at himself, he's only in his 30s, almost 40 years old. This is the peak of a ninja's life. With this kind of strength, how can Danzo compete with the young and strong 4th Hokage for power and profit? Seems. Hokage-sama, you seem to think that you can defeat me? I don't know where your confidence comes from. Is it the ninjas you brought with you or the man called Yama who came with you? Danzo didn't seem to be aware of how dangerous his situation was, and he still stood firmly opposite Watergate with his cane. Aren't you underestimating me and my roots a little too much? As the Hokage, you should naturally know how much resources our root has consumed over the years. Moreover, what you know is only some information on the books. How could we not have gained anything after so many years? What's more, you're already at our doorstep and you're trying to wipe out our roots. Regardless of whether these methods are useful or not, we naturally have to give it a try. Well, you have been delaying for so long, presumably no matter what kind of methods you have, you should be almost ready, right? Whether it's a mule or a horse, just take it out and show it to us. Minato knew very well that the reason why Danzo talked so much with him was to distract him, and at the same time to buy some time for his backup plan. It wasn't that Watergate hadn't thought of stopping Danzo's preparations in advance, but if he directly destroyed Danzo's backup plan, he didn't know what kind of crazy things the exasperated Danzo would do. It would be better to do what he was doing now and deal with every move as they came, limiting the damage to the wood leaf as much as possible. He glanced at Nangongja. The two of them exchanged glances, and it seemed like they had some sort of communication. Nangongja took a few steps forward and spoke to Danzo. I don't know if the busy Danzo-sama still remembers a small character like me? Back then, Lord Danzo-sama could be said to be high and mighty. You planted your own people around me to monitor me, and when you wanted to control me, you simply kidnapped my family. For the sake of my family, you and I could be considered to have fought a battle back then. But because of this, I also left the wood leaf and drifted away. It's fine that I don't have a fixed residence, but my sister and my family have left this place that has occupied almost all of my memories, just like an undeserved calamity. Danzo-sama, do you know how much I wanted you to experience this feeling of anger and powerlessness at that time? Do you know? As he spoke, Nangongja's face became distorted, as if he was really exasperated. He pulled out the Heaven's Calamity sword from his hand. The dark blade was now emitting a moonlight-like brilliance. Nangongja's sudden attack also startled the guards standing beside Danzo. After all, the battle between Nangongja and the root ninjas was still vivid in their minds. Nangongja's combat power is really terrifying.
Danzo still looked coldly at Nangong's sudden attack, as if he saw something interesting. Danzo had already investigated Nangong's temperament a few years ago. Danzo found Nangong's current behavior very amusing. With a gentle wave of his hand, several figures quickly rushed out from behind Danzo. These people were wrapped in black clothes and their aura was very strange. Nangong's strength is already at the Kage level, but suddenly being entangled by 10 of these strange root ninjas, he couldn't get away. Even under the pressure of 10 root ninjas, he gradually left the central battlefield. Chapter 328. Nangongja looked at the 10 strange ninjas from Root standing around him, and the anger and embarrassment he felt from being forced to come here disappeared in an instant. This attack on Root was originally led by Watergate and the Woodleaf ninjas as the main force. Nangongja said that he was here to help, but in fact he was here to support the situation, and he would only make a move when there was no other choice. Just like now, Danzo obviously had some powerful backup plan, so Nangongja naturally had to seize the opportunity to be dragged here by these fierce-looking ninjas, and naturally leave the battlefield. It was precisely because of this that Nangongja was helplessly brought here by these ninjas. Then, let me see what you are. Nangongja said, and the tribulation sword in his hand suddenly came out of its sheath. The sword domain that was so powerful just now was activated again at this moment, and it was activated under the premise that the tribulation sword was completely unsheathed, so the power of the sword domain was naturally multiplied. The sword flashed, and the mask on the face of the man in black closest to Nangongja was cut off. The mask naturally couldn't withstand the sharpness of the sword, and the entire mask was now a tattered piece of cloth hanging on the face of the root ninja opposite Nangongja. The face under the mask made Nangongja feel a little speechless, because it didn't look like a normal person's face at all. His complexion was so pale that it looked like he had been burned by sulfur. His face was filled with wrinkles and his skin was extremely loose. His eyes had also turned into a lifeless gray color. Can this kind of thing still be called a human? Nangongja looked at them and asked himself, but he couldn't come up with an answer. Because no matter how Nangongja looked at them, these strange ninjas from Root didn't look like humans. Seemingly aware of Nangongja's obvious indifference and disregard for their lives, the 10 strange ninjas roared loudly at this moment. The ninja opposite Nangongja didn't have a mask covering his face, so his open mouth was clearly seen by Nangongja. It was a mouth with 3 layers of mouthparts, and the tongue inside was also very different from that of ordinary people. If one had to compare, it was more like the tongue of a lizard, and it looked like it was deliberately contracted. Ghost. Ninja. The 10 ninjas roared at the sky at the same time, and their mouths simultaneously shouted such a name. Are these your names? Ninja. Sure enough, they don't look like humans at all. Although their bodies are full of vitality, their minds are in a complete mess. Maybe they are just guys who are ordered by someone? Looking at you living so miserably. It's better to let me help you ascend to paradise early. Ignoring the roars of these ninjas, Nangongja directly rushed toward one of the ninjas with his speed. Although the ninjas' minds were in a mess, they used their instincts to the extreme. Although their eyes couldn't clearly see Nangongja's moving figure, they still subconsciously jumped back and avoided Nangongja's sword. The sword has a shape, so naturally it can be dodged, and it can also be perceived by people with keen perception, but what about the invisible sword energy? Originally, because he avoided Nangongja's sword, the ninja's face was a bit happy. After all, he broke free from the threat of death. But immediately, his abdomen, which had clearly avoided the attack, became a mess of flesh and blood. The ninjas themselves didn't have pain nerves, but their bodies suddenly suffered such an attack, so the ninjas couldn't react for a while. Nangongja didn't care about the ninja's mood change in front of him, but his eyes were closely staring at the wound on the ninja's abdomen. Black and red granulation was constantly emerging from the wound. The wounds caused by the sword chi had sword chi remaining on them to heal. Now the ghost ninja's abdomen was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. It's hard to imagine how terrifying the ninja's recovery ability would be if there was no restriction of the sword energy. Sure enough, the rich life aura I felt didn't exist for no reason. This life aura is contained in the ninjas' bodies, suppressing the ninjas' pain nerves, and at the same time significantly increasing their healing ability. A weapon that doesn't fear pain and can recover quickly? It's really interesting. I don't know where this rich life aura came from, just relying on the research of Root to cultivate such a powerful life form is simply a fantasy. Nangongja gradually became interested in these 10 ninjas surrounding him. He just wanted to use them to leave the center of the battlefield as soon as possible, but he didn't expect to encounter such an interesting thing. On the other side of the battlefield, Watergate looked at the huge bloated existence in front of him, and he was slightly stunned. The monster was like an amalgamation of rotting flesh. A rancid smell was so pungent that the rotting flesh vaguely formed the limbs and face of the monster. Just now, Watergate used his Flying Thunder God technique to cross space and appeared above the monster in front of him, and fiercely pressed his signature Rasengan. There was clearly a huge bloody hole in the monster's body, but in the blink of an eye, the bloody hole was mended by granulation sprouting out from the surrounding flesh. Watergate naturally didn't believe it. He thought that this monster must have some kind of core or vital point. Then he also pressed a Rasengan on the monster's face. But the result was the same. Even if the monster's head was hit, it still recovered in an instant. But Watergate faintly saw some clues. This kind of recovery ability. It's just like, Danzo, you dare to do such a thing? You are simply deceiving your master and destroying your ancestors. Watergate looked at Danzo very angrily. Danzo's behavior was also known by Watergate, but he didn't think that Danzo would dare to deceive his master and destroy his ancestors. So what? The dead are already dead. Since that's the case, why not let their legacy play its role? Let's see, just how powerful is this weapon that was created with their inheritance? Even if you are the Hokage, aren't you helpless at this moment? Chapter 329. That's right, whether it's the 10 shinobi standing around Nangongjo or the huge rotten meat monster standing in front of Watergate, they all came from the legacy of a strong wood leaf, the cells of the first Hokage Senju Takuma. Whether it's their pale skin or their extraordinary recovery speed, they are all products of Root's research on replicating the first Hokage. Whether it's the shinobi or the giant beast, they are all products of failure. Over the years, Root has perfectly replicated only one shinobi with the first Hokage's genes, but although this person can use wood release, the effect is very weak, and he doesn't have the power of the first Hokage. Root has also stopped this research, but the failed products like the shinobi and the giant beast are still left behind. Just now, when facing the attacks from Minato and Nangongja, he saw that his roots were about to be destroyed. Danzo finally remembered these failed experiments. On the one hand, he let his researchers debug these failed products. On the other hand, he came out to delay Watergate's attack so that his people can deal with the important information in the base that can't be leaked. Roar, roar. The giant beast in front of Watergate suddenly roared towards the sky, and the mouth made of rotten meat on its face instantly opened, and a fishy smell came out of the mouth of the giant beast. Moreover, there were a few sticky things connecting the upper and lower lips of the giant beast, which made people feel an instinctive sense of disgust from the bottom of their hearts. Naturally, Minato wouldn't just sit there and wait for his death. It would be troublesome to deal with such a giant beast with his own strength, and the most important thing was that this giant beast's size wasn't that easy to stop. So at this moment, Watergate's hands flew up and down, and a ninjutsu was completed in an instant. He gently bit the skin of his thumb, and a drop of blood flowed out from the wound. Leaving a trace of blood on his palm, Watergate pressed his palm on the ground, and a string of spells spread out from the place where Watergate's palm pressed. Summoning Jutsu. Toad Gamabunta, lend me your power. The smoke rose, but it dissipated in an instant. A toad wearing a short coat, a short sword on his back, and a huge pipe in his mouth suddenly appeared in the empty forest at this moment. Watergate boy, you really don't think of me if there's no trouble. This disgusting and ragged fellow seems to be quite troublesome to deal with. If I were to use my own dagger to hack such a fellow, I'm really worried that my dagger wouldn't be clean enough. Toad Gamabunta looked at the giant beast in front of him with disdain. He was even worried that the giant beast's flesh would make his short sword wouldn't be able to clean it. He simply didn't put the giant beast in his eyes. Roar, roar. After a loud roar, he charged straight towards Toad Gamabunta. After Watergate summoned Toad Gamabunta, he stood on top of his head and said loudly to Toad Gamabunta, "There's no choice, boss. This guy's body is a huge threat. I naturally don't care about him, but with his recovery speed and body size, if he really enters the wood leaf, the damage he can cause wouldn't be less than 9 tails. You and I should just kill this guy here and not let him have a chance to damage the wood leaf." Toad Gamabunta was very close to Watergate, otherwise he wouldn't have been summoned by Watergate and even allowed Watergate to stand on top of his head. Toad Gamabunta was naturally clear of Watergate's ambitions. The wood leaf was something that Watergate must protect. Thus, Toad Gamabunta removed the pipe from his mouth and tapped on the tobacco before keeping it in his bosom. Using his own hand's claws? He extended his hands to the hilt of his short blade, slowly unsheathing it and placing it in front of his body. One hand on the hilt, the other hand lightly pressed on the blade's spine. Evidently, he was displaying an extremely high-level blade technique. Mystic Wood Mountain's secret technique, water-severing blade. Toad Gamabunta's originally round eyes opened even wider at this moment. The short blade in his hand spun around half a circle. The hand that was originally pressing on the blade's spine also slowly brushed the blade's edge. Chakra continuously poured into the blade from the hand that was brushing the blade's edge. Toad Bunta raised the dagger up high, so high that it was even higher than his head. Ha! A loud roar resounded through the sky, and the dark clouds that had been slightly covering Mingyu's face seemed to have dispersed in an instant. The short blade in Toad Bunta's hand fiercely pierced into the ground. Spiderweb cracks with white light appeared on the ground. No, it wasn't white light, but streams of highly compressed water spurting out. These streams of water emitted white light because of the moonlight's illumination. Gradually, these streams of water seemed to be under immense pressure as they shot towards the sky. Toad Gamabunta also exerted all his strength to pull out the short blade from the ground, slashing towards the sky. As the short blade was pulled out, the originally compressed streams of water completely exploded out. Because of the strength and direction of Toad Gamabunta's blade, these high-pressure streams of water rushed towards the gigantic beast. When these streams of water hit its body, the gigantic beast was gradually unable to resist. The rotting flesh on the gigantic beast's body started to fall off piece by piece under the scouring of the high-speed streams of water, being carried away by the streams of water. Visible to the naked eye, the gigantic beast's body started to shrink. The originally extremely intimidating roar also became softer and softer. The streams of water continued to forcefully scour the gigantic beast's body, but Toad Gamabunta's expression became increasingly unsightly. Because even though a portion of these streams of water came from underground water, whether it was the high pressure or the external streams of water, they were all maintained by Toad Gamabunta's chakra and water escape technique. Right now, Toad Gamabunta was actually nearing his limit. Watergate naturally understood this point. Thus, Watergate also slowly raised his right hand and placed it in front of his chest. Originally, this was a technique that I researched for the future Naruto, but I didn't expect to use it at this time. Chapter 330. Watergate controlled his chakra and condensed it in the palm of his right hand. Slowly, a blue chakra sphere appeared in Watergate's palm. Watergate's signature ninjutsu, Rasengan, appeared in Watergate's hand. However, the amount of chakra that Watergate released didn't decrease because of the formation of Rasengan. Instead, it became more and more. Around the Rasengan, which had begun to stabilize, a chakra was constantly rotating and entangling around the Rasengan because of the excessive infusion. Watergate also gathered the Rasengan in his hand high above his head. The volume of the Rasengan slowly began to expand. The huge amount of chakra made every ninja who was around the battlefield feel palpitations. Should it be said that Watergate was worthy of his reputation? This man who was praised by almost all ninjas as the most suitable ninja for me at this moment actually used such a terrible self-developed ninjutsu, which was a huge shock to many ninjas. My child was born with a chakra capacity that was beyond ordinary people. When he officially graduated as a genin, his chakra capacity had exceeded the total amount of chakra of ordinary jonin. I considered that it would be difficult for a child to control such a huge amount of chakra in his body, not to mention that there was a more important existence that constantly disturbed my child's control of chakra. Since there was no way to do it carefully, then I had to do it with extreme violence. After I figured out this point, I began to try to inject a large amount of chakra into the Rasengan. In this way, the power of the Rasengan could be improved. I called this ninjutsu, Odama Rasengan. A huge chakra sphere with a diameter of nearly 2 meters was held in the palm of Watergate's hand. A strong wind was generated around Watergate because of the rotation of the Odama Rasengan. Watergate was wearing a white haori with flames on his body. The words Yondaime Hokage on Watergate's back were so dazzling at this moment. Watergate lightly jumped on top of Gamabunta's head, and his whole person was like a falcon gliding in the sky. He held the Odama Rasengan in his hand and pressed it towards the giant beast that was struggling in the high-pressure water flow. The huge chakra that was originally compressed in the Odama Rasengan instantly burst out. The high-pressure water flow and the remains of the giant beast rotated together, and the giant beast's body began to slowly distort and blur until it disappeared. After Gamabunta said goodbye to Watergate, he turned into a huge cloud of smoke and disappeared. Watergate also stood in front of Danzo in an instant, holding his special kunai in his hand and looking at Danzo with hostility. "I didn't expect you to have grown to this point." Danzo looked at Watergate's great power in front of him, and the guards around him who have been trained by him to have no feelings at all, at this moment because of the powerful strength shown by Watergate, their legs were slightly trembling because of the fear of death in their hearts. Danzo knew that he was defeated this time. Although he is not without the power to fight back in life-saving means, there is a limit to the number of times he can use these means, and he can't use them indefinitely. Now there are at least thousands of ninjas loyal to Watergate around him, and among them, there are not only Kage-level ninjas like Watergate and Nangongjia, but there are also many Jonin-level ninjas. Even if he can save himself once or twice, how can he save himself 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times? At this moment, Danzo already had the heart to retreat, and he made a few gestures behind his back, indicating his subordinates to prepare to retreat. So several people standing behind Danzo slowly retreated. Originally, more than a dozen people surrounded Danzo to protect his safety, and it looked very imposing, but now only Danzo stood there alone, and it looked like a lonely hero. "Danzo, surrender. Seeing that you have solved many difficult problems for Woodleaf for many years, I promise that I won't hurt your life. Even if it's a ninja from Root, I will still grant freedom to those who are kind after screening them." Standing opposite Danzo, Watergate put forward his own conditions. The reason why Watergate and Root are fighting is because the existence of Root hinders Watergate's centralization of power in Woodleaf, and it is obvious that Root is the most despised person in many things, so dealing with Root has become a matter of course. Minato Watergate, the fourth Hokage. I, Shimura Danzo, set foot on the battlefield decades ago in order to protect Woodleaf. Like the 3 generations that each of you admire so much, I am also the disciple of the first and second Hokage. You are standing here one by one, saying that I betrayed Woodleaf, that I am the sinner of Woodleaf. But have you ever thought that without me, without Root, will Woodleaf still be the quiet and peaceful place in your eyes? Will Woodleaf still be as pure and flawless as in your eyes? It is me, it is Root who carried the darkness of Woodleaf on my own. This world has always been a place where there is light, there is shadow, there is a surface, there is a part that is covered. Woodleaf is a raging flame and it will also produce a lot of shadows. You want to eliminate all the shadows, but without the shadows will the so-called light still be light? When Danzo said this, whether it was the Woodleaf ninjas who followed Watergate or the ninjas who originally belonged to Root at this moment, their eyes were slightly moved. Ninjas themselves are a group of people who live in the darkness, and the dark side of the world is their habitat. So what Danzo said is indeed something that everyone can see with their own eyes. So we have to surrender to the darkness that you said must exist? Watergate listened to Danzo's words. In fact, there was a faint change in his heart. From this, it can be seen that Danzo's personal charisma and strong temptation is a person with a strong personality. In order not to let people's hearts waver, Watergate also refuted. We do live in the darkness, but no one longs for the light more than us. The evil in the world can't be completely eliminated, but we should never condone the existence of these evils, and acquiesce to these evils to occupy our hearts. People are human. Because we are not beasts driven by our own instincts, we are guided by our own reason to do things that are in line with human ethics and in line with the light. Danzo, whether it is you or Root, you have completely become the slaves of the darkness in your heart. I don't think you are allowed to continue to threaten the freedom and life of more people in Woodleaf. Chapter 331. Watergate's speech was particularly impassioned, coupled with his handsome face and amiable posture. Even if people don't like such a slightly chinibu and righteous speech, they still have a certain degree of intimacy with Watergate's words in their hearts. After all, people still prefer such people and things that are full of righteousness. Kit, you're too noisy. Listening to Watergate's words, Danzo had a look of disdain, because Watergate's current appearance is exactly the same as Yuan Fei, who defeated him and became the 3 generations Hokage. That's the only time you can say such pretty words. Who doesn't know how to say such words without any basis, but just to make people feel comfortable? But when you really face all kinds of difficulties in life, these beautiful words are useless. Today, Root indeed fell in your hands, but without Root, Woodleaf will once again establish a department that is no different from Root, because the existence of Woodleaf can't be without the support of Root. Listening to Danzo's words, Watergate had an inexplicable feeling in his heart. That this guy is going to escape. This was the first thought that appeared in Watergate's heart. Since he had a premonition of this possibility, Watergate naturally made a prompt decision and said to the many ninjas behind him, "Everyone, get ready to launch an AoE attack within 100 meters of Shimura Danzo. Shimura Danzo must not be allowed to leave Woodleaf and endanger the entire ninja world." The ninjas who followed Watergate to Root's base for the extermination plan were naturally experienced ninjas. After listening to Danzo's words, they immediately reacted that Danzo was going to escape. After receiving Watergate's order without the slightest hesitation, the ninjas who followed Watergate began to use their best AoE ninjutsu to attack. And the ninjas of Root also rushed in front of Danzo, to ensure the safety of Danzo's escape. Above the sky, a dazzling light sputtered out from the collision of ninjutsu. And Danzo also slowly moved his figure to a shadow. Just as he was about to escape, a voice sounded in Danzo's ear. "Shimura Danzo, I clearly promised you that I won't kill you. Why did you choose to stand on the opposite side of Woodleaf? If that's the case, then all the promises I've made just now will no longer be effective. I will do everything in my power to kill you right here." The person who spoke was naturally the fourth Hokage Watergate. Danzo glanced at the weeds at his feet that didn't look so conspicuous. Presumably, this kunai was deliberately left behind by Watergate when he was fighting with the rotten meat behemoth to prevent Danzo from suddenly retreating. "To be honest, I really admire your ability, Minato. If it was possible, I would have accepted you as my disciple in the first place. But nothing is possible. Perhaps you and I are destined to walk on two opposite paths, gradually drifting apart. Today I will leave Woodleaf unscathed, and you will be ready in Woodleaf, waiting for the day when I make a comeback. I will be the next Hokage of Woodleaf." Danzo didn't hide his desire for the position of Hokage, but Watergate didn't take it to heart. After all, Danzo was old and muddle-headed, his strength must be far from his peak state. On the other hand, his body was strong and his strength was improving all the time. He could end Danzo's life now, so wouldn't his threats and ambitions be useless? These words, I'll leave them for you to think about in your dreams in hell. Watergate directly changed his right hand into a claw and fiercely pressed down on Danzo's abdomen. A blue chakra ball also formed in the palm of Watergate's right hand. Watergate thought that Danzo would try his best to avoid his attack, but Danzo didn't seem to have the intention to avoid it at all. Seeing that the Rasengan had already fallen on Danzo's body, but the scene of the chakra twisting Danzo's abdomen, and Danzo flying because of the huge force of the Rasengan didn't appear at all. The Rasengan passed through Danzo's abdomen like passing through air, and even Watergate's arm and body directly passed through Danzo's body because of inertia. At the moment when the Rasengan passed through Danzo's abdomen, Watergate immediately used the tip of his left foot to rub the ground with his right foot horizontally, and instantly turned his back to Danzo. Illusion? Watergate tentatively said to Danzo. After all, when he attacked Danzo with the Rasengan just now, it didn't feel real at all. In such a situation, the first thing that came to mind was an illusion. But as if to mock Watergate, Danzo slowly bent down and picked up the special kunai that Watergate had just quietly thrown here from the ground. He even played with it twice in his hand and threw it at Watergate. As soon as he reached out, the Watergate caught his kunai. There was a flash of confusion in his eyes, and at this time Danzo's voice reached Watergate's ears. "Do you think that I, who can touch real objects and even launch attacks, is a virtual image created by Genjutsu?" Half of Danzo's face was covered by bandages, but Watergate found that Danzo's tightly wrapped arm was trembling a little at the moment, as if he was suffering from some kind of pain. "Didn't I just tell you? There are many things that can't be left there just because the owner died. What I just used is indeed a Genjutsu, but it's a real illusion. For you, I'm indeed an illusion that can't be touched, but as long as I want to, I can be real. How about it? Did I make good use of this inheritance?" Watergate could guess that the rotten meat monster was related to the cells of First Hokage, but Watergate had no clue about the current situation. He could only watch as Danzo slowly turned around and walked towards the depths of the jungle. Watergate didn't think of attacking Danzo's back while he was defenseless, but Watergate clearly saw the tender leaves of the grass around Danzo's feet directly passing through Danzo's ankle. Watergate wasn't sure whether his attack would work or not. But in the blink of an eye, Watergate also figured it out. He didn't come for Danzo but for Root. Although some of Root's personnel may have left, it's a bit whimsical to think that they can make a comeback with only a few of them in Danzo. So, the most important thing for him to do now is to return to the battlefield behind him with many ninjas who are loyal to him and wipe out these Root ninjas. Chapter 332. On the other side of the battlefield, Nangongja looked at the ninja ghosts in front of him that had been cut black and blue, but they were still slowly crawling towards him. This was because Nangongja gradually realized that these puppet-like things with weak self-awareness seemed to have an extremely high affinity with the natural energy of the natural world. When he left wounds on their bodies again and again, and they consumed their own energy to heal quickly, this feeling was not so obvious. However, when the life force of these enduring ghosts was depleted, they seemed to instinctively start to absorb the natural energy from the natural world into their bodies to replenish the life force in their bodies. Unlike Minato Watergate, who was the fourth Hokage, Nangongja didn't have access to such information about the past Hokage, so naturally he didn't know the mystery of the first Hokage's cells, but Nangongja himself can mobilize natural energy for his own use, and to a certain extent he is even similar to the first Hokage. So Nangongja was very curious about the way these ninja ghosts convert natural energy into vitality. In the past few days, Nangongja had directly chopped 9 out of the 10 enduring ghosts into meat paste that they could not recover from. He only left behind the enduring ghost whose face cloth had been cut by him. Then he used the Heaven's Calamity Sword to cut off the tendons of his arms and legs and break his spine. Even if he has a majestic vitality, such injuries are not so easy to heal. Subsequently, Nangongja began to constantly cut the ninja ghost's body, and has been observing the process of the ninja ghost converting the natural energy in the air into vitality in his body. Although there are still some doubts, Nangongja feels that he has touched the door a little. Just when Nangongja wanted to use the sword energy contained in his body to directly turn the ninja ghost in front of him into meat paste like his 9 companions, but at this moment he saw a huge spherical storm formed by water and wind not far from him. This move, no matter how I look at it, it has the same effect as Watergate's Rasengan. It seems that Watergate used his Rasengan to develop a derivative ninjutsu. It should be said that he really is the fourth Hokage Watergate. Looking at the magnificent scene caused by Watergate, Nangongja was slightly surprised. Then Nangongja looked at the dying ninja ghost under his feet, but at the same time, it was full of vitality. Didn't Mount Mayaboku also have a way to cultivate natural energy? Maybe Watergate has also started to touch this aspect of cultivation. Then there is no need to destroy this ninja ghost. Giving it to Watergate as a gift is also a good choice. Well, consider yourself unlucky, you can peacefully become an experiment material. But you should have lived such a life, right? It can be regarded as sending you back to your original life. After saying that, Nangongja stabbed the sword in his hand into the ninja ghost's abdomen, and the sword tip directly penetrated the ninja ghost's lumbar spine. The ninja ghost's sense of pain is dull, not to mention that after the lumbar spine injury, the instinctive pain has become even weaker, so the ninja ghost didn't make any sound. Instead, it looked at Nangongja's sword, and saw that it was getting closer and closer to Nangongja's body, so it shouted excitedly. That kind of ear-piercing howl was so unbearable to Nangongja's ears, and directly showed a displeased expression. Noisy. After that, he released the internal energy in his body and sneaked into the ninja ghost's body through the sword, and when the internal energy entered the ninja ghost's body, it directly burst out. After all, the ninja ghost has a human form, and in many places it retains the characteristics of a human. Nangongja's internal energy directly began to wreak havoc in the ninja ghost's body, and countless tendons and blood vessels were torn under the effect of the internal energy. A very unnatural red color appeared under the ninja ghost's skin, and even blood slowly seeped out of the pores. The originally pale and loose skin looked even more strange under the contrast of the red color. Because the tendons and blood vessels in its body were all torn, the ninja ghost finally lost the strength to bare its fangs and brandish its claws, and could only weakly be lifted up in the air by the sword. From time to time, blood would flow out of the ninja ghost's limbs and mouth and fall to the ground. If it was a normal person, they would have already died from excessive blood loss, but the ninja ghost's own life force saved its life. Nangongja seemed to be very satisfied with the way he handled it, and slowly nodded to the half-dead ninja ghost, then jumped up and ran towards the direction of Watergate. Only 9 piles of minced meat and puddles of blood were left on the ground. The air was filled with the smell of blood, and even after a long time, it still didn't dissipate. Seeing Nangongja walking towards him with his black shoes stained with meat and blood, Watergate didn't feel any shock. Instead, he looked at the half-dead ninja ghost that was lifted up by Nangongja with the sword. Sure enough. Are these also clones that Danzo used the first-generation cells to cultivate? Compared to the giant rotten meat beast, although these ninja ghosts seem to be a lot weaker, they have more in-depth research value. Watergate. This thing is very mysterious. It can actually absorb natural energy into its body and forcefully convert it into life force. I know that the Senjutsu chakra is practiced in Mount Mayaboku. After all, I also learned a lot about natural energy in Mount Mayaboku. I thought that it might be useful to you, so I brought it here to show it to you. In fact, when Watergate used the Otama Rasengan and Gamabunta's water blade to make the giant rotten meat beast disappear without a trace, he felt a little distressed. After all, this was the product of the first Hokage's cells after the full research of the root. Although he denied using the first Hokage's cells in such a way, since there is already a result, how can he refuse? Originally, when Watergate thought that he wouldn't get such an experimental material, his mood was still a little low. But when Nangongja brought such a thing to him, he was still a little surprised. As for not being able to use human bodies for experiments? Take a look at this thing. Its body was pale with a hint of red, and its skin was very loose. Some people would even believe that it was an evil spirit summoned from hell by a special ninjutsu, so why should he talk to such a non-human? He fed it well, and occasionally took some blood and cut it into pieces. Isn't that already a good deed? This is simply the best experimental material. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.